cancelled? If so, why? On Cross Question at 8, Labour peer Lord Maurice Glassman, Westminster leader of the Green Party Dr Ellie Chound, political editor of The New World James Ball, and businesswoman Kiki McDonough. At 9, a 1970s-style energy crisis could be on its way. The government's plan for encouraging us is to save energy. It's attracting much ridicule. Are you ready for energy-saving measures? If so, what should they be?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, former US National Security Advisor John Bolton has told LBC Europe has a lot at stake if it fails to back Donald Trump. The president has lashed out at NATO allies once again, saying he no longer needs their help with the war in Iran. He's also accused Sir Keir Starmer of making a big mistake with his stance. Speaking on Tonight with Andrew Marr, Ambassador Bolton says while President Trump has made mistakes, NATO should tread carefully.
Number one, normally you build your coalition before you go to war. You don't start the war and then build the coalition later. He completely botched that. But the issue is, what does Europe have at stake here? And Europe does have a lot at stake here. It is a mistake to say this is not Europe's war, because you're leaving the possibility open for Trump to say, okay, well, it's not Europe's war. And guess what? Ukraine's not America's war.
Earlier, a top US counter-terror official stepped down over his opposition to the war in the Middle East. Joe Kent, who was the director of the National Counter-Terrorism Centre, says Tehran poses no imminent threat. Ukraine's president has thanked the UK for not following America's lead in partially lifting sanctions on Russian oil. Donald Trump made the call in response to surging oil prices sparked by the conflict with Iran. Arkady Ostrovsky is Russia and Eastern Europe editor for The Economist. He's told Andrew Marr it says a lot about the US president's attitude to Volodymyr Zelensky.
The United States goes into war in Iran, basically almost dismissing the Ukrainian experience. When Zelensky actually did offer, and Ukraine did offer their advice and their expertise before it started, and it was brushed aside as just another PR stunt, which is what Trump thinks clearly of Zelensky.
Sir Keir Starmer has reiterated his government's commitment to the Ukrainian people in its war with Russia, despite events in the Middle East. Students in university halls in Kent will be offered the meningitis B vaccine following an outbreak of the infection. The Health Secretary says it's too early to say if there will be further deaths after 2 people died. Pharmacies are warning of supply constraints because of a surge in demand for jabs. Founder of the Oxford Vaccine Group, Professor Richard Moxon, has told Andrew the risk of this spreading nationally is still very low.
In general, these outbreaks are regionally limited. It would be an extremely exceptional situation if it became further afield in regions of England that are miles away from where it's happening at the moment.
Detectives investigating the death of a man whose body was found in a wheelie bin in Coventry have now identified him. West Midlands Police say 3 suspects remain in custody over the suspected murder of 37-year-old Thomas Niven. His body was found in a park last week. And British Airways is introducing direct flights from London Heathrow to Melbourne. The airline says it will operate a daily service from January the 9th next year in time for the Australian Open and Grand Prix. The flights will be an extension of the existing one to Kuala Lumpur. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 85 points at 10,403. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.15. LBC weather, patchy light rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland tonight, dry elsewhere, a low of 1. Sunshine for most tomorrow with the odd shower in the far northwest of Scotland. Mostly cloudy with light rain for southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and Cumbria, a high of 20 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello Hello, a very good evening and welcome to the programme. It's Iain Dale. It's 7:04 on LBC. Now, but we've talked a bit over the last couple of months about this royal visit that the King and Queen are planning to make to America. I think it's scheduled for April, but that hasn't been confirmed. And there is a lot of chatter nowadays about whether it should or will go ahead, whether it should be postponed or cancelled. I think most people have a view on this, one way or the other. Emily Thornberry, Dame Emily Thornberry, she has said that Keir Starmer must delay the King's state visit to the US because of the Iran war. She's chair of the influential Foreign Affairs Select Committee and a staunch critic of Donald Trump. And she suggested that a visit to the US next month would be inappropriate after the US-Israeli strikes on Tehran. I wonder what you think of that, because I suspect most people's views are coloured by whether they rather admire Donald Trump or whether they absolutely loathe and detest Donald Trump. And I think the whole question about the war in Iran is almost of secondary importance to people. Now, I am not a fan of Donald Trump. I think that most of the things he's done in his first term and second term, I don't agree with. There are some that I do, and when I do, I say so and get a lot of criticism for it. But I don't think that this state visit should be cancelled. Because if you think about the things that Donald Trump has said about this country and its leader over the past couple of weeks, do we really want to pour fuel on the flames of that? Now, you might say, well, given that he said those things, that is reason in itself not for the state visit not to go ahead. And I completely understand your sentiment there. But again, do we not need to think with our heads rather than our hearts? Because there's nothing I would like more than to stick two fingers up to Donald Trump, to be honest. But I'm not sure cancelling or postponing a royal visit is the way to do it. Now, there is another way around this, of course. It would be if either the King or Queen cited ill health. I mean, that's always a reason that you could cancel a visit of this nature, but it really would have to be genuine. I don't think you can't really just make something up like that. And should we even really be talking about cancelling a state visit to our supposedly closest ally? Yes, I know I can hear you laughing at the back when I say that, but that is America's traditional role as Britain's closest ally. And whatever Donald Trump says in a moment of pique or in a fit of madness or whatever, should we really let that affect the strong relationship with this country, which this country has had with the United States for close on a century? So that's the question. Should the state visit be cancelled or postponed? 0345 6060 973. Chris Shipp joins me, Royal Editor of ITV News. Chris, very good evening. Now, you've got great contacts in Buckingham Palace, which I don't have. Would you like to tell us what they're saying to you?
What I would like to tell you is currently there's no visit to cancel because they haven't announced it. We all are talking about a visit which very much has not been announced by either side. The only thing that has been said is that Donald Trump said on Air Force One a couple of weeks ago, the King is coming to our country. And I think through our own journalistic endeavours, we're able to establish that the planning for this is for it to happen at some time at the end of April. But as you say, and I think I agree with you, cancelling it would be a much worse outcome than it going ahead, because I think that would put UK-US relations in the deep freeze for the rest of Donald Trump's presidency, and he's still got 3 years to run.
What about postponing it? Because I suppose that could be a reasonable compromise. I think it would probably not meet with Donald Trump's enthusiastic approval, but it wouldn't be quite as bad as cancelling.
Yeah, I think postponing is a possibility. I heard what you said just now about, feigning some ill health. And I think the trouble with that is there'll be all sorts of other stories, given what we've had with royal family health matters over the past couple of years. So I don't think that's an option. But certainly they could postpone it on the grounds that the White House is rather busy prosecuting a war in Iran right now. But then I suppose we don't really know where we're going to be in 4 weeks' time. If this is at the end of April, as we expect it to be, we don't know what Donald Trump will be doing in Iran, what the Iran leadership will look like, whether the regime is still in control. So there is time to let things continue or or escalate, whatever the case may be. I think the palace will sit on this for as long as they possibly can. We would normally know about a state visit about sort of 4 weeks in advance. So they would be kind of usually announcing it around about now, around about the end of March, if it was going to happen at the end of April. But I think they'll just leave it as long as they can to see what's happening in Washington and what's happening in Tehran.
And this would be a really big thing, wouldn't it? Because I can't. You probably know better than I when the last state visit by the Queen was to the United States. But I certainly remember one she did with Ronald Reagan, and like they really pull out all the stops.
Yeah, I think the last state visit was when Queen Elizabeth went to visit George W. Bush. I think I'm right in saying it was about 2006. So there hasn't been one for, the best part of 20 years. Although, as you probably know, Donald Trump has had a couple to this country, and he certainly made everyone aware of that when he came over here for his second, quote unquote, unprecedented state visit last autumn. But they're a big deal. You're right. And what we think is on the schedule at the moment is about a 3-day visit. A day in Washington, D.C., a day in New York, and a day somewhere else on the East Coast. Of course, they won't venture to the West Coast because someone else lives there in California, and there'll be no chance of the King and Queen going there, just in case of all the other stories that might get written about Harry and Meghan.
So you don't think that Harry and Meghan will be invited to the state dinner at the White House?
Well, I don't think Donald Trump's a big fan of Meghan and not a big fan of Harry. So given that he will choose most of the attendees at the state banquet, I would have thought that Harry and Meghan will not have a seat at that table, no.
No, indeed. Chris, thank you very much for coming on the show. That's Chris Shipp there, Royal Editor of ITV News. Arthur Snell joins us now, former British diplomat who's the host of the Geopolitical podcast Behind the Lines and the author of the new book Elemental, The New Geography of Climate Change and How We Survive It. Arthur, very good evening. Now, analyse for us the diplomacy behind this visit.
Yeah, well, I think it's well known, of course, that Donald Trump has a very high opinion of the British royal family. I think it appeals partly to his own half-British heritage through his mother, and partly probably to his love of grandeur and fancy buildings and palaces and all that sort of thing. And it is clear that probably the one thing that Britain has that it can kind of dangle for Donald Trump that he really wants more than an aircraft carrier in the Middle East is some kind of contact and endorsement from our royals. So in that sense, his visit here, as we all know, was in his view a great success. And I think a lot of people credited Starmer with managing Trump well, given all the challenges that goes with that. And the assumption would be that another visit, albeit as you've just had in that discussion with Chris Shipp, not determined as yet, but would have a similar impact in the other direction.
Now, Emily Thornberry has said she doesn't want the King and Queen to be embarrassed either by going on this trip or by anything that happens on it. I mean, it is conceivable that in the speeches at the White House state dinner that Donald Trump could make some criticism of Keir Starmer during his speech, which, I mean, that would put the King in an incredibly difficult position.
Oh, yeah. And not just that. Maybe he'll start talking about, taking over Canada, where, of course, our king is king of Canada as well, or make disobliging remarks about previous presidents with whom the king would have had a good relationship. So, yeah, there are loads of risks. And I think that the challenge with Donald Trump is that he creates these terrible risks, whether we're talking about war in Iran or dragging our monarch into, political polarized issues. On the other hand, can we really afford, I mean, as you put it yourself, Ian, can we really afford to put fuel on the flames of a relationship that is currently quite combustible?
I mean, look, I was going to say I've never met the King. I have once, but I didn't exchange any words with him. What is your judgment of what he's thinking here? Because the Prime Minister, I mean, let's be clear, put him in a bit of a difficult position with that invitation to come on a state visit here. I suspect the King wasn't a great fan of Keir Starmer doing that, but recognised that it was an important thing. And these state visits, they are at the behest of Downing Street, aren't they? It's not, the King hasn't decided that he wants to go on a state visit to America. It's Downing Street and the White House that will have cooked this up between them.
No, that's right. It's not the King sort of saying, I fancy a trip over there. I mean, my judgment is that he is very experienced. I like you, I've not had much personal contact with him, but I heard him give a speech to Foreign Office ambassadors one year, and he reflected on, one of his earliest acts, as sort of official acts in the world of diplomacy, was meeting President Kennedy, back in the 60s. So there's somebody who's seen a lot, and of course had that extraordinary apprenticeship before he ascended to the throne. So I think the king accepts, he's a dutiful man. He accepts that it's his duty to do this. And he's just as capable of understanding the dilemmas as the rest of us, that he doesn't want Britain to have a toxic relationship with the United States, even if the character of its president at the moment makes that hard to avoid.
So what's your betting? Do you think it'll go ahead? Do you think it'll be postponed? Or do you think it'll be cancelled?
I think some visit will happen. I'm not very well placed to guess the date. I mean, obviously the king sadly has got health issues, and of course the other issue, perhaps with the war, but there is a reasonable question to be asked around security. I mean, we might be digging around for excuses, but they seem to be reasonable questions that we would care about. But I think there will be a visit, and after all, it is 250 years since the independence of arguably the most significant former colony of the United Kingdom. So it would be odd if there was absolutely no official visit to mark that.
You've just offended every Indian listener that we have, Arthur. That's not very diplomatic.
I did say arguably.
Arguably, yeah, okay, I'll give you that one. Arthur, thank you very much indeed. That's Arthur Snell there, former British diplomat. His podcast is called Behind the Lines. So the question that we have for you this evening in this hour, should the planned royal visit to the United States now be delayed or even cancelled? Or do you think it should go ahead? 0345 6060 973. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 16 minutes past 7.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
This is a shambles.
Straight to the point.
How was that allowed to happen?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Show some evidence, Minister.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
With a gift in your will to UNICEF, you'll know that the job of making a better world for every child is in good hands. It'll be the start of an incredible journey, connecting you with a powerful community of people working tirelessly to protect and nurture children so they're empowered to take on the world. To find out more about leaving a gift in your will that never stops working for children, search UNICEF Legacy for a free guide today.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on. Sorry.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Octopus Energy. Great value and outstanding customer service. Recommended by which? A record 9 years running.
A Thameslink train is a place where family moments become more peaceful. Where you can spread out and a game of I Spy gets a scenic upgrade with snacks, stories and the occasional sheep for a bonus point. Less stress, more yes with kids' tickets for £2 at thameslinkrailway.com. Terms apply.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 18 minutes past 7 on LBC. Let's take a couple of texts before we go to your calls. This is one from Albert, who says, it would be embarrassing for the king after Trump has insulted his country and his armed forces recently. Cancelling the visit would send a message and embarrass Trump! ! Well, again, you're thinking with your heart there, aren't you, rather than your head? I mean, what is the point of gratuitously embarrassing the President of the United States? He embarrasses himself quite enough as it is. I'm not sure we should give him any help in that regard. Anthony's in Ashford. Hello, Anthony.
Hello, Ian. Yes, definitely should go ahead. It's bad form, isn't it? What the Royals are very good at doing is standing aloof from things like this. You know, after all, they entertained a certain member of the royal family for many years who was a total embarrassment, but kept their calm there, didn't they? These are royal occasions. So I think they definitely need to go.
Sorry, who are you talking about?
Well, Andrew.
Right.
Yeah, you know, they're very good at rising above it. And I think Charles and Camilla, she's up to it because her health is also quite delicate. they should definitely go, because what an opportunity. This is about the people of America and the people of Britain. It's a huge occasion, and I'm sure the King will be very eager to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Martin says, Trump keeps on insulting our country, our Prime Minister and our armed forces. No way should our head of state be going to the US. Cancel the trip. You see, one of the things I find interesting here, it's a bit like people who are against the war in Iran, and let's face it, as I acknowledge, that is the majority of people in this country. A lot of people are against it purely because Donald Trump is behind it and Israel is involved. And that's all that matters. The rights and wrongs of toppling the Iranian regime or stopping them getting nuclear weapons, I mean, that's almost a secondary issue to many people. And I wonder how many people, when the Queen has been on a visit to, or went on visits to some pretty bad regimes in the world on state visits. I mean, was there any of this kind of talk then? Oh no, she mustn't go because we disapprove of that particular regime. You look at half of the Commonwealth governments, we probably wouldn't approve of many of them. And yet they're members of the Commonwealth and the Queen still went to them. She received lots of fairly bad people on state visits. I mean, Nicolae Ceausescu is the obvious example, Robert Mugabe being another one. And those were because the government of the day decided that they should happen. The Queen didn't really have any choice in the matter. And I think this is where it's not the King's decision as to whether he should go. It is down to Downing Street. Let's go to Elliot, who's in Cheadle. Hello, Elliot.
Oh, hello, Ian. Nice to speak to you.
Hi.
The King and Queen should visit the USA next month, providing the King is healthy enough, because it is a reciprocal diplomatic state visit. The King is the best politician we have, although he shouldn't engage in politics, in dealing with the likes of Trump. Charles's infectious personality disarms people with inflated egos such as Trump, and Trump is in awe of the King. And that's our great advantage in repairing wounds over Iran, strengthening British relationships with the USA, and developing our economic mutual benefit.
I agree with that. I think that he is a seasoned diplomat. I can't remember on any of the different foreign trips that he's been on, either as Prince of Wales or now as King, I can't remember a single time when he's fallen off that diplomatic tightrope.
No, he hasn't. He's absolutely excellent at doing the job he does. And he's better than that because he can converse with people over many subjects. He's an extremely intelligent guy. He's seen a lot of politics in his time, and he's been involved in politics when he was a younger man. So he understands Trump. That's the key thing. And Trump respects him unbelievably.
Well, I think that is definitely true. But do you have any fears that there might be some sort of diplomatic incident with Trump not walking that diplomatic tightrope and making a speech criticising Britain, criticising the Prime Minister, criticising the British government in front of the monarch? Because, I mean, in those circumstances, what does the King do? Does he get up and say, as this trite old phrase, have a bit of a Love Actually moment, where he'd probably get a lot of cheers from people in this country? But that's not what the King is there for, is it?
No, it certainly isn't. No, I think, quite honestly, nobody knows what Trump is liable to say or do. It's impossible. It's an imponderable, isn't it, really? You just don't know. But the King will be prepared for it, and he will act stoically. He'll rise above it. He'll take no notice of it, and he'll talk to Trump privately and quietly, whatever he says publicly.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Andrew says the royal visit should go ahead. Hopefully, King Charles emphasises our close relationship with the USA in terms of the land and the people, totally independently of the current administration, which is very temporary indeed. Well, you'd like to hope so, but there are still these murmurings about Trump having ambitions beyond the second term. I can't see how that could be brought about. I really have to say that. There's this mad idea that J.D. Vance could get the presidency and then stand down, name Trump as his vice president, then stand down. I don't think people would stand for that. I really don't. Robert is in Edgware. Hello, Robert.
Hello. I think these state visits should not go ahead. It should be postponed because the country's at war. and it would be disrespectful and highly insensitive to the American people if the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces was distracted by, well, let's face it, it's a social jolly, really, isn't it?
Well, it's a bit more than that. But
well,
I mean,
it's a little bit more,
but also,
it would be
let's face it,
embarrassing if during the visit, while the president is squiring around the king and the queen, there is a serious loss of life reported, and he's not there to attend to it. So, as far as the formal state visit is concerned, I think that should be postponed until there's more peace, if you like. But as to visiting the US, I think it would be a good idea. They are celebrating their centenary, or their whatever it is.
Well, it's 250 years since independence.
All right, so 250 years. It's to show that the British people are with them, if you like. They want to join the celebrations. There's no ill will towards the American people. And if the king happens to be there and he can hold a reception or a banquet or whatever in the British embassy, he doesn't need, I mean, he can, obviously, he's not going to slam the door in the president's face if the president turns up, but he can invite other dignitaries, the retired, the emeritus presidents, members of Congress and the Senate, who are not themselves directly involved in the war, not because it's a war, but simply so that there is no question of Britain having distracted the president from his duties as Commander-in-Chief.
I understand the point you're making, but of course Donald Trump is distracted every day, apparently, and we saw this, I think Edward Luce from the Financial Times somehow got hold of Donald Trump's number, and Donald Trump gives his number out to journalists and they ring him up and he talks to them, so he's very easily distracted.
Well, that's a good joke for somebody, but the king shouldn't be doing it. Nobody should be doing it. We should not be taking away the attention of the commander of the forces at a time when people are dying, when people are coming back.
I mean, but if we think about it logistically, the state dinner would be in the White House. If something important happens and needs a presidential decision, he can be called out to the Situation Room or the Oval Office and make the decision. He'd be in the state dinner for a couple of hours. I think you're making a bit of a mountain out of a molehill, if I may say so.
I'm trying to avoid making a mountain. I'm trying to say, look, I'm not saying cancel it, postpone it.
Yeah.
Be there for the celebrations.
Because in theory, it doesn't have to take place necessarily before July the 4th, does it? It could take place a couple of months afterwards.
It could take place at any time. There's another reason for going to the embassy, and that's to express the regrets, if you like, of the British people, the British government, in sending an associate of Epstein as the British ambassador. It's a way of discreetly saying, look, I'm really sorry this happened.
I think that the word Epstein will be avoided at all costs during that visit.
The word what? Epstein. Of course it will. Of course it will. But it'll be understood by those in the know.
Okay.
That we're not proud of what happened. We're not pleased with what happened. We're very sorry, and here's the king.
Okay, Robert, thank you very much. Steve says, it's more than just a state visit. It's a very important anniversary independence for the USA, which transcends any views on the incumbent president. The king should go. Malcolm's in Bodmin. Hello, Malcolm.
Good evening, Ian. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. What would you like to say?
Ian, the king has to go on July the 4th. It can't be a week, fortnight, a month later. It has to be on July the 4th, because that's the only reason, I think, for the rest of his life, he will be going to America. It is simply to celebrate the 250th anniversary of America. But I also think, Ian, there should be no side shows. The king should go, help America, help the president, sadly it's Donald Trump, to simply celebrate the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. Now, Ian, Trump is on the worst hiding he's ever had in his life. in the last few days. He is sinking very, very fast, Ian. And the country, I heard Swarbrick, I've heard Nick Ferrari, the left, Nick Abbott, James O'Brien, whoever on the left in. People are right behind Starmer, not out of sympathy, because all of a sudden the country are realising that we cannot follow this lunatic in this escapade, because it is so dangerous for the world. It will grind to a halt, because I think Americans are going to stop him. But the thing is, Ian, as I say, Trump is sunk well below his line. And I think that the midterms, which are very, very fast approaching, they're going to be something, I think, that will personally, they will hurt him. He will be very, very upset. But then America, Ian, can start looking back out to the world and saying, look, we are not all lunatics. Some of us are quite sane. Stick with us, because the guy, yes, he's got 3 years, but hopefully, if we win the midterms, the House, certainly, and if they get both houses in, Trump will be impeached for the third time, and it'll be 3 times for an American, as they say in Wales. He will go in.
Well, there's a lot to unpick there. I think impeaching him would be very, very difficult. It depends on how the midterms go. You're absolutely right. But given that you have to have 66 or 67 of the 100 senators voting to convict, it's the House that impeaches and then the Senate votes to convict. I find that very difficult to think that will happen. But it would be quite a sideshow, wouldn't it, if it did?
Ian, look, I honestly think that we're getting to a point where the American Senate soon, each senator is going to have to stop and think, well, look, if I stick with this man, I'm going to lose anyway, because most of the people in my constituency, again, by November, America will be hurt so financially that each and every citizen will be saying, am I Republican? Am I Democrat? Am I independent? And they're all going to start saying, well, look, first and foremost, we have to get rid of this guy. And I think they will start picking senators who would impeach Trump, because, Ian, how can this man not be removed in the next year or so, given what he has done?
Because it's I don't know how much you know about the American Constitution, but I did look this up recently to try and see how it could happen. I looked at the likely number of Democrat and Republican wins or losses in the House and the Senate, and believe me, it's a real stretch to think that the House could have enough Democrats in it to impeach him, and then the Senate would have enough of a majority to actually convict him.
The House, I think, only needs a majority of 1 to impeach. I don't think it needs any kind of supermajority. So I think he will be impeached in the House if the Democrats win the House, right? Then if the Senate shifts and the Dems are in charge, then it's a whole new ballgame.
Well, it is, but they would still, according to most of the predictions, if the Democrats win the Senate, they would only have about 53 to 55 senators. So they would have to get at least 12, maybe 15 Republicans to vote with them. Now, it's possible that could happen, but that's the only way of actually removing him.
By then, Ian, look, by November, next January into February, if this war drags on, you will literally have younger Republican senators saying, look, I need a future. I like my job.
Well,
it's a good place to be.
Maybe, but the whole MAGA crowd, don't underestimate their power, because you don't get to be a new senator unless you buy into that at the moment.
No, Ian. MAGA is well sick of Trump. Trump is killing his links with MAGA.
Well, maybe, but these people still control the selection process for the new senatorial candidates. So I think you're underestimating how difficult it would be. Anyway, we've gone off as a slight tangent, but entertaining though it was. Malcolm, thank you very much indeed. News headlines on LBC at 7:33 with Katie Dartford.
Former US National Security Advisor John Bolton has told LBC Europe has a lot at stake if it fails to back Donald Trump. The president has lashed out at NATO allies once again, saying he no longer needs their help with the war in Iran. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister says the focus must remain on Ukraine while hosting Volodymyr Zelensky at Downing Street. The Ukrainian president addressed MPs and thanked the UK for not lifting sanctions on Russian oil amid the war in the Middle East. And 2 more cases of meningitis have been confirmed following an outbreak in Kent which killed 2 people. Health Secretary Wes Streeting has told MPs 700 doses of preventative antibiotics have been handed out. LBC weather, patchy light rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland tonight, dry elsewhere with a low of 1.
This is LBC.
If you owned a diesel Nissan, Renault, Jaguar or Land Rover built between 2009 and 2020, you could be entitled to compensation. Checking takes minutes at jointheclaim.com, and if successful, compensation could be worth thousands. Don't miss out. You could be among the millions of drivers across the UK bringing diesel emissions claims. Check now at jointheclaim.com.
Join the claim!
Eligibility criteria apply and any compensation may vary.
Hey you! Yeah, you! What would you like from your investing app? 6% interest on your ISA, a free share of your choice, or no commission on stocks and ETFs up to €100,000 per month? With XTB, you get all of the above all in one app, the XTB app. Get your free share and start investing with XTB today. XTB, where your money works.
Capital at risk. Investment values can rise or fall. Limited free stock availability. 2% ISA rate boost for 90 days. New clients only. T's and C's apply.
Calling all young creatives. Kickstart your career in media. Apply now and join us in years 10 or 12 at Global Academy. globalacademy.com.
A Thameslink train is a place where you can just switch off. Where you have the chance to scroll your feeds as you roll past fields, or simply relax with a podcast, playlist, or power nap. Go with your flow and save with advance tickets at thameslinkrailway.com. Terms apply.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:36 on LBC. Let me tell you who's on Cross Question at 8. Lord Maurice Glassman, Labour peer, who's the founder and leader of the Blue Labour Campaign Group. Keeking McDonough, founder of Keeking McDonough Fine Jewellery, whose clients include the Queen and the Princess of Wales. Only classy people on Cross Question. Dr. Ellie Chowns, Green Party leader in the House of Commons, an MP for North Herefordshire, and the political editor of The New World, James Ball. They'll be joining us at 8 to take your calls. In the meantime, we're asking you whether you think the King and Queen should be going on a state visit to the United States, possibly at the end of April. Do you think it should go ahead, or do you think it should be postponed, or even, dare I say it, cancelled? 0345 6060 973. But before we come back to all of that, let's talk about Ukraine, because President Zelensky has been in Downing Street today, seeing Keir Starmer. He's been in the House of Commons today as well. And stalking him almost has been our deputy political editor, Aggie Chambray. You've been shouting at him, haven't you?
Asking him questions is how I prefer to phrase that. But I have indeed. So President Zelensky went to Downing Street earlier after having seen the King. The red carpet literally unfurled for him. And it's the 4th time he's been to Downing Street since Keir Starmer has been Prime Minister. And it was the 3rd time, if you count one down the line time, that he's addressed the House of Commons. And today he was here to push the Ukraine conflict back up the agenda, among other things, when some leaders' focus has been pushed onto Iran. And yes, I did, while he was in Downing Street, as he got out his car and walked towards that front door of number 10 Downing Street, I did ask him a question. And that was, the question that I asked him was, can you trust President Trump anymore? He didn't respond to that question. He just walked into Downing Street.
Probably thought you were being very rude.
Instead. But the reason I asked it, Ian, was because Trump has been warning that a lack of assistance for his war will be very bad for the future of NATO. And also when he did this Financial Times interview on Sunday, he said he didn't have to help them with Ukraine. And then Volodymyr Zelensky went to the House of Commons, I said the 3rd time he addressed the House of Commons, where he told in a committee room 60 MPs and peers this.
The regimes in Russia and Iran are brothers in hatred. And that is why they are brothers in weapons. And we want regimes built on hatred to never win. in anything, and we want no such regime to threaten Europe or our partners. Can we just live alongside regimes like this? Ukraine tried to live in peace with Russia, and 2 invasions in 10 years. This is the result.
So I said there were a few reasons that Volodymyr Zelensky was here. Number one was to push the Ukraine conflict back up the agenda, something Keir Starmer referenced to. He's told Zelensky the focus must be on Ukraine, despite the Middle East being in conflict, saying Putin can't be the one who benefits from a conflict in Iran, whether that's oil prices or the dropping of sanctions. And he may have been referring there to the US loosening sanctions, preventing other countries buying Russian oil. But the other reason was that they signed this new sort of, as it was billed, world-leading partnership to boost global defensive capability. And they said other nations too would cooperate on this pact. It's about anti-drone surveillance, AI, general tech innovation too. And another reason I think Volodymyr Zelensky was here was to sort of send a message to Donald Trump as well as other leaders. And he talked about, the detail about how Ukrainian tech works to fight cheap but advanced drones from Russia. And we know from John Healey, the Defence Secretary, that they think that the sort of hidden hand of Putin, that's how John Healey described it, has been behind some of the attacks and some of what we have seen in the Middle East in recent days too. So that all happening on that day where Donald Trump has once again made disparaging comments about Keir Starmer in the White House.
Now, let me just ask you about what we're talking about in this hour as to whether you think this royal visit, the state visit to the United States, will go ahead.
It's a really strange one, Ian, because at the moment we all know that it is supposed to be happening, but it hasn't actually been officially announced. And now we're talking about whether or not it could be cancelled, even though actually it hasn't been officially announced. And there are definitely people on all sides of the political spectrum who think, why on earth would we go ahead with this when Donald Trump, as I just said, is repeating his comments that Keir Starmer is no Winston Churchill, saying he doesn't produce. And there are people who just think, why on earth would we be putting the king in this position? But when I've spoken to Downing Street about it, when I've spoken to people in government, it does sound like it is going to go ahead. And I think the argument they would make is sort of that the king and the queen are above politics and shouldn't be responding to Trump, indeed, as they don't want to respond to every comment that Donald Trump makes.
Well, if it does go ahead, I think it's going to be interesting to watch.
Definitely.
You should make a bid to go over there.
A live bid, yes, please.
Yeah. OK, I'll put your case.
Thank you.
Aggie, thank you very much indeed. That's Aggie Chambray, LBC's Deputy Political Editor. Right, back to your calls on whether the state visit should indeed go ahead, be cancelled or postponed. Let's go to Kevin in Basingstoke. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Ian.
Hi, what would you like to say?
Well, I mean, there's no evidence that state visits achieve anything, is there? So,
well, they can do. They're supposed to promote goodwill between nations, and I suppose having the head of each nation going on a state visit sends a signal, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, we gave him the second state visit, and then he tariffed us almost straight away. He's tariffed us twice. First presidency,
but less than other people.
Pardon?
Less than other countries.
Well, no, most countries got 10%. The EU got more, but most countries got 10%, the same as us.
Yeah, that is true, but the EU got more, which means that it puts us at a competitive advantage vis-à-vis them.
Well, no, if we was a part of the EU, we would have, our economy would be bigger anyway. So,
well, we're not part of the EU. So, I mean, we deal with things as they are. And the fact is, if we'd been members of the EU, we would have got the 15% tariffs too.
Yeah, and our economy would be £100 billion bigger. But anyway,
so these FBPE Remainer economists tell us, and you swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. Clearly.
Well, I mean, you was talking about that 75 benefits of Brexit, but you didn't name any because there's probably been a joke.
Well,
but anyway,
no. There's a book. Hang on, Kevin. You brought it up, so let me respond to that. There is a book called The 75 Benefits of Brexit, and it lists them all out. They're fully footnoted. They're fully researched. So maybe you should read it.
Well, what was the biggest benefit then?
Oh, this is not a phone-in about the Brexit benefits. This is a phone-in about the state visit.
I know it is, but you wanted to carry on.
No, you brought Brexit up, so I told you how I thought you were wrong. Back to the state visit.
Why would Donald Trump take any notice of what the King said? He wouldn't, would he? He's going to do exactly what he wants to do.
Well, the King isn't there to tell him to do anything or not tell him to do anything.
So what's the point of it? What's the point then?
Because it's a ceremonial visit.
Pardon?
It's a ceremonial visit.
Yeah.
Between heads of state.
It doesn't achieve anything, so what's the point?
Well, I think state visits can achieve things. I mean, if this state visit went off without incident, I think that would be an achievement in itself.
Yeah, but he visits loads of countries, and I'm sure...
Yeah, but not all countries are celebrating their 250th anniversary of independence, and there was independence from Great Britain. So...
why should we even go anyway? Why
oh, my goodness. What is the...
your wife
if you can't see the point of... If you can't see the point of our king going to the United States to mark the 250th anniversary of independence, then frankly, I give up.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be. I mean, why would we be going there when he's done nothing but damage to our country? Look what he said.
He's the President of the United States. You may dislike him, you may not like anything he does, you may hate him, you may loathe him, but the fact is, he is the President. He was elected by the American people, and we have to respect that, whether we like him or not.
Well, we don't have to respect it. We can stand up and say, look, we don't like what you've done to NATO. We don't like your actions.
Yeah, and that's for our Prime Minister to say. It's not for the King to say.
Well...
Do you not understand the difference between the head of government and the head of state?
Of course I do. I'm not stupid.
Well, you're giving a very good impression of it.
Well, so do you sometimes.
Well, there we go. I haven't cut you off.
No, you haven't, but you do sometimes.
Would you like me to?
No, I don't. What else do you want to ask me? I don't think he should. I don't even think we should have a royal family. They don't benefit us in any way whatsoever. What benefits have we had from having a royal family?
Do you want me to list them? But frankly, we haven't got time because we've got to go to a break. It's 7:46.
Hey, smart speaker. Play LBC.
Good morning, I'm Nick Ferrari. It's time to get to your calls.
First-time caller, a little bit nervous.
Thanks for taking my call.
There is no question. Ending the war is the quickest way to reduce the cost of living. That is my first priority.
Hear every side of the story.
I would not be surprised if they put troops on the ground.
Really, really sad what we've become as a country. Basically an example of how our country is just in decline.
Dharma is going to have to get involved, but in a very limited way, because I think we are quite exposed.
I'm at the petrol station and it's just cost me nearly £100 to fill up half.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. LBC, leading Britain's conversation.
A message from TfL.
I saw him in the local news a few days after. His name's Rakesh. They had to put him into a coma just because I didn't look again at that turning. He had 2 kids. How did I not see his bike ahead of me? Well, I didn't look again. He didn't make it.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Tesco Insurance are driving down the cost of motoring with 10% off car insurance. Take out a car insurance policy before the 15th of May 2026 and you'll get 10% off with club card prices. We offer a range of cover options, so you can choose the one that's right for you. Save 10% when you buy or renew a car policy with Tesco Insurance. Search Tesco Car Insurance and get a quote direct today. Club card required. Excludes add-ons. T's and C's apply.
JP Morgan Personal Investing gives you the clarity to make more informed decisions on your investments, which is great because right now something else just became crystal clear. Your kid just outgrew the kids menu. Now he's ordering a truffle gnocchi? You consider making a don't gnocchi it till you try it joke, but now's not the time. Now's the time to grow his world, one bite at a time. Search JP Morgan Personal Investing. Invest with clarity. Capital at risk.
Hi, I'm Claire, and last year I did my first big hike for Cancer Research UK. It was amazing. The scenery was stunning, the volunteers cheered us through it, and the free hot meal at the end was really what I needed. I did the full marathon hike. There's also a half marathon and a 10K if you don't fancy the big one.
Join thousands of hikers like Claire and escape to nature as you help to fund life-saving research. Search Big Hike today for 30% off your entry. Together, we are beating cancer. T's and C's apply.
Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
7:49 on LBC. Vicky in Worcestershire says, I think it does need to be cancelled. Trump is crass, unhinged and deranged. He'll start bad-mouthing the UK and Starmer in front of the King and put him in a difficult position. I'm not a royalist, but I think it's awful to force Trump on anyone. Right, Lenny's in Ashford. Hi, Lenny.
Good evening, Ian. Well, I think it should go ahead, and the emphasis should be on the American people. Because by cancelling it, you are belittling the American people.
How?
Well, I think if you're saying we're not going to come there, they're going to be offended, and it'll be very, very difficult to repair the damage. And I think if the King goes and says, "I'm here to celebrate with the American people," and emphasises on that, I think it would do a lot of good.
Well, I broadly agree with you. I think that there are obvious dangers in this trip, but the King has advisors like politicians do, and they will effectively wargame the visit and so probably come up with scenarios where Donald Trump goes off script, maybe insults the Prime Minister or our country in a speech, and then they'll have to advise the King on how he should react to that, whether he reacts to it at all or does it very obliquely. I mean, there are ways of reacting to crassness, or it doesn't necessarily mean that he has to go in all guns blazing and say, "What a disgrace you are, Mr. President." That they usually have a good way of finding a form of words that doesn't cause offence, even if the president had caused offence.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But we've got to remember the King has had a lifetime of training for these situations. And whatever, if Trump does start any bad mouthing, the only person it's going to hurt is Trump. He's not going to gain any medals by it.
No, and I think the American people would be pretty disgusted if he did go down that road.
That is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, well, you said it very well, Lenny. Thank you. Steve says, I'm a Republican and wouldn't wish the King I'm a Republican and wouldn't wish the visit on the King. Trump's visit here did nothing for diplomatic relations, clearly. So what's the point? If and when normal relations resume, then normal relations can resume. I don't agree with that. I think the visit by Trump to this country on the state visit a few months after he took office for the second time, I think that did achieve something. And I think Starmer's relationship with him was partly based on that visit. Now, it's all gone awry. You're absolutely right in the last few weeks. And I don't know how Keir Starmer picks up the pieces from that, if that's at all possible. But it is possible that this visit by the King to the United States could actually help repair that slightly fractured relationship. I mean, Steve, you probably don't think it really matters, but I think it does matter. That they are our closest ally. They are the world's number one superpower. And Trump has now got it in his head that we are an unreliable country and we have a prime minister who can't produce anything. Well, I mean, he's partly reflecting a lot of the views of the British people as well, I think, on that. But we don't like to hear it when a foreign leader slags off our country or slags off our prime minister. So I think it would be wise for Donald Trump to desist in this, but he's been doing it now for the last 3 days, and I suspect he'll keep doing it. Right, let's get the voice of common sense from James in Ayr. Hello, James.
Hello there, Ian. I don't know if it's common sense or not, but I think the King's been put in a very, very difficult position. I don't think he should go. I don't think there's anything to be gained by it. And by the way, your comment that Keir Starmer has to pick up some pieces of something, I don't really understand that. I think most of the British people actually commend Keir Starmer for his actions in the last couple of weeks. I think it's boosted his reputation, and I think there's absolutely nothing to gain. This man, Trump,
James, before you go on,
libelled UK troops who served in Afghanistan and who died, and the King is meant to forget this and just pretend it didn't happen. And Donald Trump is much more unpopular in the United Kingdom than I think yourself and other right-wing commentators realise.
Oh no, I completely realise he's unpopular. He's unpopular with me, so I'm not denying that. But just remember, this royal visit is only coming about because of Number 10 Downing Street. It hasn't come about because the King wants to go. It's Number 10 that have ordered him to go.
Well, I think that's inappropriate. I think things have changed in the last while, and I think that Number 10 should reflect on that and should delay the visit, let's say. I think until your last contributor said it should be delayed until things are not quite so hot politically.
I think there is a possibility that would happen. If you'd asked me that a month ago, I'd have said, no, it'll go ahead come what may. But I think there is a possibility that will happen. And I suspect the reason given will be that either the King's or Queen's health isn't up to it. And I think that will be a bit of a fig leaf, possibly. I don't think it's a good idea to manufacture excuses for not going. I think if they want to postpone it, they should be completely honest. But that is what I suspect will happen. Thank you very much, James. Let's go to John in Hammersmith. Hello, John.
Hey. Having lived there for a long time, I can tell you that if there is a delay or a cancellation, it would be considered a deadly insult by the American people. This is not the King of England going to see Donald Trump. This is the United Kingdom going to see the United States of America.
Yeah.
And so, as you said, the Prime Minister or the Cabinet or the government, His Majesty's government, has told him to go. And the last time those two got together, £300 billion landed on these shores. So who knows? When the King travels, he doesn't travel alone. The entire government goes with him, or the emissaries of the government. And so deals are done and things that can benefit this country immeasurably, especially considering the situation vis-a-vis the rest of the planet as we are getting closer to 2027 and China's intent to have a go at Taiwan and Russia doing its thing in Ukraine. We must concentrate on Ukraine. We must keep NATO solid and strong and ready to go if necessary. And the only way to do that is with the United States. And as the King is our foremost diplomat, I'm very happy to see him go.
Okay, John, thank you. Michael's in Rains Park. Hi, Michael.
Good evening there, Ian. I believe that the state visit should be postponed only if Donald Trump is agreeable. And the reason I believe that he may be is that my understanding is that he is attempting to postpone his own state visit to Beijing to see Xi Jinping. So I think we've got to take a broader view of this and understand that obviously the war is weighing on Trump's time at the moment, and it's not all about the UK. It's also about the wider the wider issue.
Well, I think it's interesting that you've raised the visit that he's due to make to President Xi in China, because I think I have read that I think you're right, that he's looking to do that a little later in the year. So I suppose that is a sort of something for Downing Street to grab onto if they want to come up with a reason as to why it should be postponed.
Absolutely, and I think another caller made the point about Trump's time, and I just think that the way in which many commentators are looking at this, it's all about pride and about Britain's place in the world. But obviously, Trump also has broader considerations than just that.
Sure. Michael, thank you. Ben says the royal family is already in a parlous position. Going to meet the person who has likely started World War III could well be the death knell for them. I don't really buy that, but anyway. Most of us in the UK don't support Trump's war, and support for the royal family is waning. So to compound this decline would be sheer folly. To put the king in this position is madness. How many world leaders who have imposed sanctions on us are considered to be our ally? I'm not sure who's imposed sanctions on us. Anyway, we must face facts. Europe is better off without Trump. Thank the Lord that we didn't leave our true friends behind. Oh. Thank you very much, Ben. Right, Cross Question next on LBC. For the next hour, we'll be joined in the studio, taking your calls, by Lord Maurice Glassman, Labour peer, who's the founder and leader of the Blue Labour campaign group, Kiki McDonough, founder of Kiki McDonough Fine Jewellery, Dr Ellie Chowns, Green Party leader in the House of Commons and MP for North Herefordshire, and James Bull, political editor of The New World. They will be here to answer your questions. 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp on that number. You can text 84850, and of course, you know what I'm going to say, you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Donald Trump has once again lashed out at NATO, saying he doesn't need allies' help with the war in Iran. He also warned the Prime Minister made a big mistake with his stance. Meanwhile, a top US counter-terror official has resigned over his opposition to the conflict in the Middle East. The president has responded to Joe Kent's warning that Iran doesn't pose an imminent threat.
I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. It's a good thing that he's out, because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat Iran was. The question is whether or not they wanted to do something about it.
Ukraine's president has repeatedly thanked the UK for not following America's lead in partially lifting sanctions on Russian oil. Donald Trump made the call in response to surging oil prices sparked by the Iran conflict. So Keir Starmer's reiterated his government's commitment to the Ukrainian people in its war with Russia, despite events in the Middle East. Volodymyr Zelensky's addressed MPs and peers at Westminster.
The regimes in Russia and Iran are brothers in hatred. And that is why they are brothers in weapons. And we want regimes built on hatred to never win.
A man whose body was found in a wheelie bin in Coventry has been identified. 37-year-old Tom Nitham was discovered last Friday. His family say their hearts are in pieces and have urged anyone with information to contact police. 2 people have been arrested on suspicion of his murder, along with a third suspected of assisting an offender. And the Chancellor says the student loan system needs to be fixed, but it's not at the front of the queue. Rachel Reeves has suggested hospital waiting lists and lifting children out of poverty are more important. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 85 points at 10,403. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.15. LBC weather, patchy light rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland tonight. Dry elsewhere, a low of 1. Sunshine for most tomorrow with the odd shower in the far northwest of Scotland. Mostly cloudy with light rain for southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and Cumbria. A high of 20 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
This is LBC. From Global. Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. Welcome to Tuesday's Cross Question. I'm Iain Dale. It's 2 minutes past 8. On the panel with me tonight, to my left, Kiki McDonough, founder of Kiki McDonough Fine Jewellery. Next to her, Lord Maurice Glassman, who I don't think has got any fine jewellery on, but you never know, maybe hidden. Labour peer, who's founder and leader of the Blue Labour campaign group. To my right, Dr Ellie Chowns, Green Party leader, though you'd never know by what she's wearing tonight. That's an incentive for you to watch, by the way. Green Party leader in the House of Commons Midlands and MP for North Herefordshire. And next to her, James Ball, political editor of The New World. They are here to answer your questions on 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp on that number. You can text 84850 and watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross question. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app. This is LBC.
I should explain that Ellie is resplendent in green because it is St Patrick's Day, and happy St Patrick's Day to all our Irish listeners. I know we have quite a few. Right, Aziz is in Ealing. Here's the first question. Hello, Aziz.
Hello, good evening, and hello to the panel. My first question, my question is, Joe Kent resigned his position, and his statement was that USA was not under threat from Iran at all, but they went to war under pressure from Israel and also the pro-Israeli lobby in the USA. I wanted to know if the panel agreed with this statement or disagreed with this statement, his resignation statement.
Well, Joe Kent has today resigned as the director of the US National Counter-Terrorism Center, claiming that Iran posed no immediate threat to the US prior to the beginning of this war, and that the Trump administration started, quote, this is a quote, started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary in the White House, she's really pushed back against that this afternoon and explained why the White House think there was an imminent threat from Iran. Ellie Chowns, what's your view?
Well, this is a really significant development. You know, this man, Joe Kent, director of the US National Counter-Terrorism Center, a long-time Trump supporter, a man who has served numerous times with the military in all sorts of theatres of war. And for him to be resigning on this point of principle is a very, very significant move. You know, he has said there was no credible threat, imminent threat from Iran. Now, that was the justification used by the US and Israel for launching their clearly illegal, utterly reckless, supremely dangerous strikes on Iran a couple of weeks ago now. And it's clear that that's had hugely significant ramifications for the whole of the region. It's an incredibly dangerous and reckless thing to have done. And he's clearly stood up for the principles that he believes in terms of recognising that this does not make the world any safer, recognising that it's completely incompatible with things that Donald Trump has previously said about not wanting to get involved in foreign wars. And I think it's an extremely significant development.
And it sort of, I suppose, brings back the memory of Marco Rubio saying, I think on the day after the airstrike started, that, well, Israel wanted to do it, so we thought we'd go along with them, which he's kind of pushed back from now, but it does feed into that. James Ball.
I'm a little reluctant to start hailing Joe Kent as a bit of a hero. I think, look, there is a huge list of good reasons to criticise Israel and an even longer list of good reasons to criticise this idiotic war that's been started. But Kent's letter included the very bizarre statement that Israel was responsible for George Bush's 2003 invasion of Iraq, which starts to get you to Jews are behind everything conspiratorial nonsense. And you are seeing within MAGA and within the American right a rise in anti-Semitism, often guised as skepticism over Israel. And I look at some of this and see a stab in the back narrative emerging. Good Donald Trump led astray by the nasty Israelis. Donald Trump is perfectly capable of starting idiotic and catastrophic foreign adventures on his own. He's threatening Cuba now. He's sort of done his nonsense in Venezuela. He's threatened Greenland. I don't think Israel is behind all of those. Trump very consciously moved his assets there. He very deliberately sort of did that. I worry here that people will see someone like Kent saying things they agree with, condemning a war that is catastrophic, that is bad, and may give him a status he doesn't deserve. I worry here that he is not someone engaging in legitimate criticism of Israel, engaging in an illegal and stupid war, and starting to paint them as a puppet master or the reason that MAGA is failing. And I think we know that that can lead to some very dangerous places. So he's right, but in the same way that a stopped clock is right, I think.
Lord Glassman.
Yeah, I absolutely disagree. I think that the Iranian regime is really despicable. They killed 40,000 people in 3 days by hand between January the 8th and January the 10th. That's an enormous slaughter of their own people. Average age 26. They've consistently preached death. They've committed atrocities. They've certainly attacked American bases throughout the region consistently over that time.
Were they an imminent threat? That's really what Aziz is asking.
Look, it's a constant threat, is what I would say. The very existence of an Islamic revolutionary regime committed to the violent subordination, the oppression of Christians, the oppression of
But you can see how they're an imminent threat or a constant threat to Israel. But what about the United States?
Oh, yeah, they absolutely have. Well, United States is the great Satan. And I'm using regime terminology. They call the United States the great Satan. Israel's the little Satan. And by the way, Britain is the great interferer, if only. But that's our historic reputation in the region. And also, you've got to understand how deeply and truly the Iranian people want rid. But because it is a revolutionary regime, because it's so systematic in its use of violence and repression and surveillance, it takes outside interference in order to break their control. And so, look, this should be golden days for our country, the restoration of a constitutional monarchy. I absolutely Javid Shah, to all Iranian listeners, Javid Shah, this is the final battle. And I think it's going to confound all of you. This is going to have a happy ending. Tonight it's a fireworks night in Iran. It's an ancient Zoroastrian festival of fire. Look at what's coming out. The people are lighting bonfires on the street and saying, Javid Shah, long live the king. And tonight they're not being killed. Tonight, because they've been taken out so systematically.
How can this end well?
Because what's going to happen is in about 2 to 3 weeks, the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi, will call for the people of Iran to rise up. The regime will not have the capacity to slaughter them as they slaughtered them just a few weeks ago. I just repeat that statistic, 40,000 dead in 3 days. They were shot by hand.
Nothing has happened to stop Iran's ability to quash its own people.
Oh, yes, it has.
Internal uprisings are not stopped by major arms and missiles. They're stopped by small arms.
But if you follow carefully, what's happened is the degradation of the weapons base of the IRGC. This is what's been going on.
It hasn't degraded the repressive system. If anything, it's reinforced that sense of...
I totally disagree. I think that they've had their weapons caches destroyed. They've had their communication system disabled. At the moment, the Ayatollahs are right out the picture. This is an incredible reality we're witnessing now.
Yeah, the IRGC are the ones in control.
But their weapons and their ability, as indicated tonight, everybody go on whatever it's called now, X, and look at the videos coming out of Iran. The people on the street celebrating and singing Javid Shah have not been killed tonight. And that's an example of their depletion of their weapons.
Well, looking back, I think it was about 4 weeks ago, when there were those massive demonstrations in Iran. Yeah. All the people came out, and well, not all, the majority of the people came out, and they clearly wanted democracy. At that stage, President Trump said, we're behind you, we're coming to help you. And it seems to me that this war has gone from helping people to oil. And there doesn't seem... And so it's very difficult to know how this is going to play out, and it doesn't matter who resigns and who doesn't resign or what they think. Is that it seems to me that the people of Iran have been forgotten, and that this is about oil and more oil and no oil. And I'm concerned that the people of Iran, who really have gone through exactly as you say,
and been let down consistently by the West.
Exactly, and so these people are, I think, in the middle of a fight between democracy, which, as we know, you have to fight for, and it's very fragile democracy, and oil, and. Who wins? I don't know.
There's just no prospect that US and Israeli airstrikes and an illegal action in Iran is going to generate democracy. It's fantasy land.
We don't know yet.
We have an example. 23 years ago, it's basically a replay of Iraq.
No, it's not.
We don't know that.
That's such lazy
we
thinking.
don't know that.
I disagree.
We don't know that yet.
It's illegal action justified on completely flimsy basis. The US spokeswoman saying,
you can say it's
evidence.
illegal however much you like. It doesn't make any difference. They are doing what they're doing. Is there not a possibility that when the bombing stops, whenever Trump thinks that he's won, I mean, he keeps saying almost now that he's won, he's destroyed the Navy, destroyed the Air Force.
And then he hasn't.
But at that point, he then goes back to what he said at the beginning of this, surely. He says, right, now is the time for the people to decide their own futures. Well, now, you don't know what will happen there. I don't know what will happen there, but they may.
I think the people of Iran will quite reasonably look at Venezuela, where they got the head of state, they've left the regime in place, and nothing has actually fundamentally changed. They have no interest in a nation-building project. They have no interest in enforcement. And the idea that, say, the Crown Prince, who has never in my life set foot in Iran, let alone run anything bigger than, a tiny charity, is going to run a nation with no infrastructure, with no sort of support, with no financial aid, when you have all sorts of interests in the country and infrastructure against it, and a people who essentially, when you're bombed from outside, when you're bombed by the enemy, you rally even to the terrible government. The idea that this is a project that ends in nation building and that Trump has the attention span and the willingness to do that is gone.
It would be nice, though, to have faith in the people of Iran.
I do.
And their determination and their will to have some sort of democracy. And I think at the moment we have to think about the people and hope that there is a situation which is good enough for them to come out and not be fired on immediately by the Revolutionary Guard. And I mean, maybe I'm a dreamer, but I'm holding that thought that just maybe, the Iranian people will get.
I think you need hope before you launch the bombs.
I pay huge tribute to the bravery of all of the Iranians over decades who have fought for freedom, fought for their rights. And again, huge numbers of them killed earlier this year. It's an outrageous, repressive, cruel regime. I would love to see the back of it. My point is that the US and Israeli action, I really do not believe. There's no case that will make the change. And what it has done instead is ignite a wider regional conflagration. We've got 1 million people displaced in Lebanon. We've got thousands of people being killed by strikes in Lebanon, as well as all over the region through Iranian retaliation. We've got huge implications for the global economy.
To have democracy.
But this is not the way to... You do not impose democracy.
Nobody's imposing anything.
For example, so the US has generated about 10 different justifications for what they're trying to do, only one of which is regime change and establishing democracy. One of the things that was in place was a process of negotiation to pull back from the nuclear risk. That process was, and we've seen today briefing suggesting that Jonathan Powell was surprised by just how effective that negotiation was, just how much was on the table, just how close it was to a resolution.
He wasn't there.
And then he was there. He was there for the negotiations that were happening in Geneva. Yes, this has been published today.
It was in Amman.
There's been 47 years of negotiations.
No, that was ages ago. The negotiations before these strikes were in Amman.
Okay, maybe I've got it wrong and it was in Amman, but he was apparently there at the point of those negotiations 2 days before the US and Israel launched these strikes.
Well, it wasn't in Geneva, anyway.
Okay,
right, we will move on to some equally interesting subjects in just a minute. I know, Maurice, you were very keen to get back in, but we do need to go to a break. It's 17 minutes past 8.
LBC.
When you switch the family's unlimited plans to Vodafone, you save. So while Nan's learning to voice note,
Can you hear this? Is this on?
you're saving. While your daughter's setting a new high score on her favourite game,
Get in!
you're saving. While your son's video calling his crush for 3 hours,
I love you more.
you're saving. Save more when you switch your family's plans to Vodafone with Vodafone Together. Eligible plans from the 30th of October. Credit check and terms apply.
Wrong tool for the job? Don't make that mistake with your van. Get up to 30% off selected new Toyota vans and pickups with a warranty up to 10 years or 100,000 miles with every qualifying routine service. Visit your nearest Toyota centre or visit toyota.co.uk/van savings for more details. Savings on selected vans and pickups ordered by the 31st of March 2026. UK residents. See toyota.co.uk for full details. T's and C's apply.
With up to £3,000 every year towards career growth at Amazon, I started in the warehouse, knowing I could train in things like coding or robotics. It turns my job into a career. So it means I can be who I want to be, even if I haven't quite decided who that is yet.
Amazon, opening doors with up to £3,000 every year towards career growth. Eligibility conditions about type and duration of employment apply.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids, I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
19 minutes past 8. With us on the panel, Lord Maurice Glassman, Labour peer. Kiki McDonough, who should be a peer but isn't yet. She owns a fine jewellery company. Her clients include members of the royal family, no less. Dr Ellie Chowns, Green Party leader in the House of Commons and MP for North Herefordshire. And James Ball, political editor of the New World. Right, a WhatsApp question from John, who says, does the panel consider Keir Starmer to be severely lacking in his ability to make important decisions in a crisis? If so, in this respect, is Trump right about him being no Churchill? I was listening to Andrew Marr interviewing Gabriel Pogrund and Patrick Maguire, who wrote a book about the first 18 months of New Labour. Not New Labour. Whatever this Labour is.
New Labour.
And
that's a good question.
That was the point that they were making, that he's not a political man, he has no interest in policy, and he's not a decision maker. Now, I would say, to be Prime Minister, you probably need to be all of those three things. James Ball.
I don't think I disagree with their overall critique, but actually on this one, I think stodgy as he is and sort of diffident as he is, he's probably landed about where most of the public are. He's been helped a great deal by the fact that two of his biggest political rivals have quite significantly U-turned on it, and only one of them realises that. Sort of Kemi Badenoch not actually seeming to notice that her position has fairly radically shifted. I think twice. I think she's on her third stance at the moment. Is a bit of a gift to him. I think his fairly sludgy position of, look, let's stay out of it, but do what we can to defend the bases.
I don't think the question is particularly on Iran.
Also,
I think it's on many other things.
It's a crisis. That's what's there. He is also politically very weak, and weak leaders have to rely on their cabinets. Weak leaders have to rely on their internal constraints.
He's got a majority of 170.
I know, and it doesn't feel like that.
No, it doesn't.
This is the thing.
From the start.
He doesn't have a working majority of 170. He knows that he's very easy to topple. He knows he's very sensitive to his PLP. I think he isn't a very decisive leader. I think the critiques are there. I think they are fundamental and they're not going to change. But it actually does mean he has to actually... Everyone says they want more cabinet government. Keir Starmer is kind of delivering what cabinet government looks like for the first time in quite a long time, actually. And this isn't a virtue. This isn't a decision. This isn't something that's been sort of thought through. But that's kind of how he's working. And on Iran, it's kind of got us to a decent place. On everything else, it's very sludgy. He was voted in because people wanted things to change. People were absolutely tired of the status quo, and Labour was the only practical alternative in 2024. His danger is that we are in five-party politics. There are an awful lot of alternatives.
He's done so well that Ellie's party is overtaking Labour in the polls.
Exactly, unprecedented. And so he can't deliver change, and that's what the public wants.
Kiki,
he's stuck.
As a non-party political person, what's your...
Well, as you know, I run a business and I employ 21 people. And I think he's absolutely hopeless. I can't begin to tell you. I've been watching politics since the 70s, since the late 70s. And honestly and truly, I don't think I've ever come across such a hopeless government. And I find it really scary. There's no stability, there's no direction, there's no security. And I mean, as far as the decisions he's making about Iran not joining in there, I think he can't, because we haven't got any defence. Our defence capabilities are not up to...
Which, to be fair, isn't down to him.
It's down to successive governments. I completely agree with that. But he obviously can't get any more involved than he is at the moment. But I think, no, every decision, 14 U-turns in 2 years. I mean, if you run a business, it is just catastrophic, if you want one.
Labour peer Maurice Glassman.
Sorry.
Hi. And what's the question?
Or shall I repeat it? Does the panel consider Keir Starmer to be severely lacking in his ability to make important decisions in a crisis? If so, in this respect, is Trump right about him being no Churchill?
Well, Trump is certainly correct in saying he's no Churchill. I mean, it couldn't be... But I've never supported... I mean, in my time in Parliament, I had Ed Miliband, I had Jeremy Corbyn, I had Keir Starmer, spoilt for choice. I mean, I've never got involved I've never supported really any of those leaders. We lack strategic direction. We lack a proper analysis of what's wrong with the country.
I thought you were quite supportive of Ed Miliband.
It didn't really work out, did it?
No, but I thought you were considered a bit of a policy guru for him, I think, at the time.
Let's talk in Trump language about the mainstream media. That just really wasn't the case. I mean, it just wasn't. I mean, I'm very loyal to Labour. I'm very loyal to the Labour traditions. I want an industrial strategy. I want to build up our armed forces. I want much more emphasis on borders, sovereignty, looking at post-Brexit. Foreign policy. I'm a Bevanite. My favourite politician in Labour history is Ernest Bevin. And essentially, I think it's really encouraging what's happening. I think, the joke I made earlier, it's the last thing you want to hear when you go to the doctor. It's progressive.
I mean, a lot of the things
I think it's important that Labour distinguishes itself from the Greens, has a much more patriotic industrial policy above all. And that's the way that we've got to go, and that's the way we will have to go. So at the moment, what we've got is a sort of very strong obsession with human rights, legal decisions, which aren't emphatic decrees of the United Nations. They're just interpretations. As I say, killing 30,000 people in Iran, to me, that's just wrong. And, should be opposed.
It was rumoured a few weeks ago that you were the potential Labour defector to reform, and given your answer just now, in quite a lot of what you said, I could hear coming from the mouth of Nigel Farage.
That's never going to be. In fact, I got a funny story about that. I went into the book is to put 300 quid on Arsenal coming second, because I just wanted to queer their pitch and give me some hope that there could be a happy ending. More likely that the Shah will be restored in Iran than Arsenal will come second, but I still wanted to believe that. And the guy goes, well, are you Maurice Glassman? And I went, who's asking? And he turned around and my face was up as the favourite to defect. It will never be. It's not going to happen. I'm Spurs. I'm Jewish and I'm Labour. Those are just fundamental facts.
And about to be relegated.
Yes, this is a bit of a worry for you, isn't it?
But you don't support a team because they're going to win.
I support West Ham, so I know that very well.
You know that to be true.
I support Liverpool.
Yeah, and you don't support human rights only for one group of people and not for another group of people. Human rights are really important and they are universal. I mean, back to the question, is Keir Starmer severely lacking in his ability to make important decisions in a crisis? I mean, yes, he's lacking in his ability to make important decisions, and he's clearly, his days are numbered as leader of the Labour Party. That's absolutely clear. At the same time, I mean, I think back to, Boris Johnson making decisions or not making decisions in the crisis of COVID.
What about Theresa May?
We haven't had kind of, we can't look back at a long history of brilliant prime ministers making great decisions. But I think you made a really good, important point there, Iain, earlier on, and that's not just sucking up to you, but
people ever do.
We've got, Labour has got this huge majority. People elected them because they wanted change. People were passionate about change. They've just had the same old, same old. Labour isn't acting like it's got a huge majority and can get on and do things that will actually fix the country. And that's the reason why people have got so disillusioned. It's the reason why so many people are now flocking to the Green Party.
Because their majority, their huge majority, half of their huge majority, are not helping them at all. It's a bit tricky situation. It's a bit of a catch-22, though.
Well, in fact, Kiki, it took a very long time for a bunch of Labour backbenchers to start feeling that they could kind of put their heads above the parapet and start shaking the tree a little bit, because so many of them, the handful that did right at the beginning about the two-child benefit cap and then about things like winter fuel allowance got absolutely slapped down. Now we are seeing a little bit more restiveness among Labour backbenchers, and that's a good thing, because we need to have politicians who are not just doing what they're told by the party whips, but are actually operating in line with their consciences and operating in line with what people voted them in for in the first place. Now, we've seen lots and lots of U-turns because under Keir Starmer, the government's tried to do lots and lots of terrible things and has been forced by external pressure, by Labour backbenchers, to turn around and make slightly better decisions. But, in this situation, I made the point today in the House of Commons, we've had more than a year now of basically Keir Starmer effectively kind of emboldening Trump, essentially, and Netanyahu, because he has failed to stand up to them. There's been the occasional bit of kind of, possibly behind-the-scene criticism, but there's been a heck of a lot of rolling out the red carpet for Trump, and there's been a total failure to take action against Netanyahu's war crimes.
Starmer would say that it's in our national interest to have a good relationship with the United States, whoever the president is, and to be fair to him, up until the last 2 weeks, that strategy was working.
I actually disagree. I don't think we've got anything concrete to show for it. And I think what we have got is an emboldened Trump who is throwing his toys out of the pram yet again on the international stage in a really, really dangerous way.
I just wanted
to...
I just want to pick up on one thing, which was you said Keir Starmer's days are numbered. And there's something quite interesting there, because there's increasing anxiety within Labour ranks that they aren't. Keir Starmer is not the only indecisive person within Labour. The different factions are really struggling to settle on candidates. A lot of the obvious factions, whether you look at Labour's right or it's soft left or whoever, have their flaws. They have issues with them. There is no obvious compromise candidate. And Labour is traditionally very, very bad at cooing its leaders. David Miliband was hopeless at trying to topple Brown. You had all sorts of failed coups against Blair before the eventual successful one. And Labour's rule book is structured to make it quite hard to coup a leader. And there's a real sense among people who want him gone, and there are an awful lot of those, that they're going to blow it. There are a lot of people who want to see the back of him in May who are not confident that they can coordinate well enough to get it done.
I think you created a new verb there, to coup.
To coup, yeah.
Morris, final word to you.
Yeah, look, I agree in many ways, but I just want to say that killing 40,000 of your own citizens...
Well, you keep coming back to this. It's actually not the question.
It's a war crime. And you seem to have less intensity about that than about Netanyahu. And I think that...
Can I be really clear about this, Morris, though? I am absolutely clear that the actions of the Iranian government against their own people were outrageous and absolutely a war crime. The actions of the Israeli government in the genocide in Gaza, which has killed tens of thousands of people...
But there was no October the 7th by the people of Iran.
Was also outrageous. And
there was no random slaughter of 1,000 people.
The difference is that we call Iran a threat, absolutely. But for some reason we call Israel an ally, despite these outrageous war crimes. We've got to be clear. If standing up for British interests and standing up for British values means anything, it means standing up and saying to people who we technically call our allies, the US and Israel, and saying this behaviour is completely
unacceptable. Well, I'm going to stand up and say
action.
We need to hear the news headlines, Ellie. It's 8:31, and let's hear those headlines with Katie Dartford.
Former US Ambassador to the United Nations John Bolton has told LBC NATO has a lot at stake as Donald Trump lashes out at his allies once again. He told LBC the president could turn his back on Ukraine if European countries aren't more cooperative. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has told Volodymyr Zelensky the UK's focus must remain on Ukraine despite the war in the Middle East. The Ukrainian president has been in Downing Street to discuss a new defence deal on the manufacture and supply of drones. The Health Secretary says it's too early to say whether there will be further deaths from a meningitis outbreak. 4 schools in Kent have now confirmed cases of the infection, which has so far killed 2 people. LBC weather, patchy light rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland tonight. Dry elsewhere, a low of 1.
Hear every side of the story. LBC.
What's the best present you ever got for your birthday? I bet it wasn't as life-changing as £1 million. Every week with the birthday draw, there's £1 million to be won. And you can enter from as little as £1 or via post. Enter by midnight on Sunday and your special day could win you £1 million. Visit thebirthdaydraw.com. Is it your lucky day? From Global and ITV. 18 plus UK only, no purchase necessary.
A spectacle far beyond your imagination. Be amazed. Be moved. Be there. For an experience that will stay with you forever. Disney's The Lion King at London's Lyceum Theatre. Book now at thelionking.co.uk.
Idle money lies in your current account, picking crumbs out of its belly button, wondering, should I eat them? But when you start investing with Monzo, your money's always busy. It turns on regular investments, invests your spare change, and tops up your stocks and shares ISA. It even helps you make sense of risk and return. Monzo, the bank that gets your money moving. You could get back less than you invest. Monzo current account required. UK residents 18 plus. T's and C's apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:34 on LBC. With us on the panel, Dr. Ellie Childs, Green Party leader in the House of Commons. Now, what's it like being leader in the House of Commons? Has power gone to your head?
It's great, especially since we've had a 25% increase in our party size in the Commons in the last couple of weeks.
That, as Disraeli might say, is what did he say? Lies, damn lies, and statistics.
It's certainly statistics,
true,
but it's no lie. It's completely true, yeah. Hannah Spencer joining us on the Green benches, recently elected in the Gorton and Denton by-election. She's absolutely fabulous. Really exciting to be working with her. And, yeah.
Can she fix the Commons? I mean, she's a plumber and a plasterer. It feels like quite good we've got some skills in there at last.
We've had a lot of kind of jokes about that, and yeah, she's definitely planning to go on the. You can do a sort of basement tour with the people who are doing the kind of restoration and renewal thing. So we're going to get her down there as soon as possible.
Maybe she could get a better quote than 40 billion. that would be quite good, wouldn't it? James Ball is here, political editor of the New World. Now, we first met when I published your book, didn't I?
We did. You published Post-Truth.
Post-Truth, that was it. And it actually it sold quite well.
It did quite nicely, that one, yeah. It turns out there's money in fake news. Who knew?
Who knew? Maurice Glassman is here, Labour peer, known for the concept of Blue Labour. In 30 seconds, tell us what Blue Labour is.
It's just really faithful to the Labour tradition, putting patriotism, democracy, liberty and the security of our borders at the heart of our politics.
OK, and Kiki McDonough is a fine jeweller. You've got some cracking earrings there, if I may say so.
Thank you so much.
Not that I know anything about jewellery, but...
Well, you do, because you've just said they're cracking earrings, so you do. You know a lot.
They're beautiful.
Right, let's go to another question. It's from Liam. Should the King wash his hair, or perhaps see a man about a dog? Anything to get out of going to see President Trump? Now, the Foreign Affairs Committee Chair, Dame Emily Thornberry, suggested today that the visit should be postponed to save the King and Queen embarrassment. Kiki?
Well, I think he should go. I think he's immensely knowledgeable. I think he's very diplomatic. He's hugely experienced, and if anyone can pour, excuse the expression, oil on troubled waters, I think it's him. And I'm actually very pro that he goes. I think because I've never really believed in the special relationship, but I think our relationship with America is essential rather than special. So I'm keen for him to go.
Okay.
I think there are sort of two issues with this, aren't there? There's the reason the King is due to go to America is that it's the 250th anniversary of independence. Now, if we're worried about embarrassment, I think going to the 250th anniversary of them celebrating throwing off the shackles of a king and throwing off Britain was probably already a bit embarrassing enough. But you can't really postpone a 250th anniversary. He's either going or he isn't. So I don't really think it was all that well thought through as a suggestion. But I think you have a king to do some of the embarrassing things. And I think given that we can't delay it, I think he probably has to go, doesn't he?
No, I think he shouldn't go. I think it's really clear. You know, Trump loves all the pomp and circumstance and the status, and he'll just be ever so delighted that he gets the king again. You know, he's loved all of the state visit. It's part of this whole red carpet treatment that the UK is giving Trump. Now, if we have to send a really, really, really minor royal along because it's 250th anniversary, then great. But, you know, sending the king along just kind of, it sends a signal of, you know, agreeing with the United States. It sends a signal of, you know, he'll have the king standing next to him, lots and lots of photo opportunities
but it's
about
a ceremonial
how special
visit.
the relationship is.
It's about the anniversary. This has nothing to do with the king endorsing Trump.
But I think it will be used that way by Trump, and I don't think that there's any way to kind of divorce what's happening in current politics from the ceremonial business. And because I think Trump cares more about the ceremonial than he does about the content and the thinking through. You know, he's just launched a war without any strategic plan. Well, then let's use the handful of levers that we have at our disposal. And clearly the King's visit is one of them.
Kiki, you weren't looking too impressed.
Well, I'm not impressed by that because I think our relationship with the United States will have to go on after Trump leaves, after Keir Starmer leaves. Well, you say that. Can you see into the future? For me, I think it's really important that we have that essential relationship with the United States, because if anything happens to us, or we happen to get into a war, not the one we've got at the moment, but one that is directed at us or at Europe, we will be looking to the United States because we have not got enough defence to defend ourselves. And I think our relationship with the United States is essential. It may not be special, but it's essential. And I think we need to do everything to keep it calm.
Trump is clearly a very unreliable ally, and we should be putting our energies into developing relationships.
You say
elsewhere.
that, but do you know after the King's visit he might be a reliable one again?
I mean, and how has that gone for the last 15 months? Well, this is precisely my point. We spent 15 months kind of emboldening Trump to do whatever the heck he likes.
I don't think we're going to agree on that one.
Yeah, I absolutely, the King has to go, and this relationship with the United States is absolutely fundamental to our security, and is indeed covenantal. It goes through the generations. I can tell you a funny story. When I was at the inauguration.
You were, I remember.
Yes,
yeah.
and I met Trump, and he said to me that his favourite word was tariff, and I said to him that my favourite word was king. And he said, I like that word. I really like that word. And he's a very different kind of president. He rules a lot through executive order. He's quite monarchical, more in the Louis XIV way than in, like, the Queen with a single bar heater wearing a cardi in winter. But it's absolutely vital that we strengthen that relationship. I think that it's turned out that the EU is in a very precarious state. There's the war in Russia. We have never needed a constructive and profound relationship with the United States more, and we don't choose who the president is.
And I mean, this decision...
But we're blessed with the monarchy. We're blessed with the fact that we've got a head of state who can go there and command.
But this visit is going ahead at the behest of Downing Street. It's not the King that has made the decision to go. This is a Downing Street initiative. But, I mean, Kiki, you know the royal family probably better than anybody around this table. I mean, the King and Queen, I mean, they're old troopers at this. They kind of know if Trump says something at the state dinner that is going to be disobliging either to our country or Starmer, the King will know what to do.
They've had years of being diplomatic. I mean, years. I mean, the King is, 75, 74, whatever he is. And, I mean, they've spent... Higher. 78, they've spent years being diplomatic and charming, and it comes from being hugely knowledgeable. I think, and the Queen is, she's great. I think she's fantastic. But I do think that it's really important that this relationship between the UK and the States carries on as diplomatically and as calmly as possible. And I think they're absolutely the right people to do that.
Right, let's go to an early break because I want to really get our teeth into the next question and allow a bit of time for it. It's 8:42.
This is LBC.
So, what's on your to-do list today? Why don't you check if you're eligible for pension credit? It tops up your pension income and also opens up help with heating bills, council tax, and more. Search pension credit on gov.uk or call 0800 991234. There's nothing to lose. Check today. Pension credit. Credit where credit's due. Eligibility criteria apply.
Turn ordinary into the extraordinary every day with the Lexus LBX. Whilst most SUVs are big and brash, the LBX is quietly bold and confident. Refined luxury crafted into a compact SUV. The Lexus LBX. What car's best small SUV 2024 and 2025?
Train to Chichester. Flasks filled, snacks packed, all ready for Maisie's first stargazing adventure.
Come on, Maisie. Follow everyone up to the top of that hill.
Oh, look, that one's the plough.
Shooting star. Wow.
Made it. Last train back and feeling cosmic. And it seems we have an astronaut in the making. Download the Southern Railway app to book kids' tickets for £2 on off-peak journeys. Southern Railway, where every stop is a story.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, barrel leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. As a landlord, you will need to get on top of these important changes. They will affect how you manage your tenancies. Act now. Read the guidance at gov.uk/renting is changing.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:44, Lord Glassman is with us, Kiki McDonough, Dr. Ellie Chowns and James Ball. Right, Jonathan asks, should we all be doing a bit more to save energy during this crisis? Now, an energy advice tool has been launched by the government to give hospitality businesses tips on how to save energy, including, wait for it, turning off ovens, great if you're a restaurant, and bottle fridges overnight. The government have denied that this is a recommendation, but it's a Telegraph story and they seem to be sticking to it. And we're going to be talking about this much more after 9. Now, I'm old enough to remember the energy crisis of the early to mid-1970s when the speed limit was reduced to 50 miles an hour when we were on a 3-day week.
Let's take a bath together. Do you remember that?
Yes. I'd really rather not. If you do.
Share a friend.
You had to switch the television off at 10:30. Ellie, do you think we're heading back to those days?
Look, I think energy efficiency is a really good thing, and we should, of course, be doing more to save energy all the time, not just at the moment. I mean, clearly at the minute it's in all of our minds because of the huge spike in energy prices, although, for those of us that got the price cap, that's fine. But in my constituency, a lot of people are heating their homes on heating oil, and they're facing prices going through the roof, and companies engaging in price gouging as well. So, there are real issues, obviously, about energy prices in the middle of a cost of living crisis spiking up because of this illegal war. But the point about energy efficiency, this is a serious point. Now, the government is actually doing quite a lot in terms of investing in shifting our energy supply over to clean, green, cheap renewables, and that's a good thing. But the other side of the equation is the energy efficiency. We need to be insulating our homes. We need more investment. The government finally, a few weeks ago, published its Warm Homes Plan to invest more in insulating homes. But it's too little too late, and we need to go further and faster on that, because otherwise we end up in this situation where you have these energy price spikes and everybody suddenly thinks, oh my goodness, but we've lost the opportunity to invest in making sure that our homes aren't leaking heat out of the doors and windows and roofs.
Call me old-fashioned. Isn't it up to individuals to insulate their own homes? Why should the taxpayer have to meet the cost of insulating somebody's home when they're quite happy to spend a few £1,000s on going on a holiday but not insulating their homes?
So there are lots of ways of doing this. So it's not necessarily that the government should pay to insulate every home, right? I mean, first of all, the government should make sure that when new homes are being built, they're properly insulated, right? Making sure that future homes are future-proof. But there's all sorts of things the government could be doing. For example, interest-free loans, mechanisms to enable people to pay back the cost of insulation after they sell their homes. And of course, for publicly owned housing, then it is the government's responsibility to make sure that that investment is made. It's a big upfront investment, but it pays itself back over time. And this is what government is for. It's for kind of clubbing together, helping people so that we can do these investments that make things cheaper for everybody in the long run.
But you're talking about billions of pounds of public expenditure, aren't you?
Which will save even more in the long run, as insulating us from future...
But public finances don't work like that, do they? I mean, the Treasury
actually, they do. That is precisely how public finances work. Government invests in things that pay back money over time. They invest in infrastructure. They invest in, putting out broadband across the country so that the country can be more economically efficient in the long run. This is exactly what government does, because government operates theoretically on longer-term timescales and can borrow money more cheaply. The problem is, if we don't have a government that is prepared to put its money where its mouth is on these things that pay back over time, then we end up with just issuing advice about turning off bridges rather than the infrastructure.
On the price gouging front, Mike in Salisbury says that in an interview on Sunday, Ed Miliband admitted there was no evidence of companies price gouging. Maurice?
Yeah, look, I think this is a much more profound issue, some gimmick about any of this. So I think that it's good to be warm. It's very, we live in a cold country and it's good to be warm. I think that the idea that we're going to be carbon neutral by 2030 or even 2050 is a fantasy. I think that we have to look very seriously at the reality that fossil fuels will remain part of the energy mix for the foreseeable future, at least the next 70 years. We have to invest in renewables, that's one thing. We have to intensify our move towards nuclear, but we also have to open up very much the fossil fuel area, particularly in the North Sea, because without cheap, abundant energy, we can not have an industrial strategy.
It's a complete fallacy.
Fantasy is saying that the more you spend, the more you save. I mean, I didn't interrupt you at all. You're interrupting me, and I take that quite badly. I think that the opposite view, which I'm putting to you, is that we have to really reduce energy prices. Cheap and abundant energy is absolutely essential for our future, and that includes renewables, fossil fuels, and nuclear.
So, Maurice, now that you've finished, I mean, we reduce energy prices by people not launching illegal wars in the first place. That's what we've seen with the recent price.
I don't know what's your basis for who said it was illegal, this war.
There is no evidence of an imminent threat which means it's illegal.
Listen, I'm going to really put my foot down here. We're not going to have every question, whether it's you doing it, Ellie, or whether it's you doing it, Maurice, coming back to the war in Iran. This is particularly about energy prices and energy efficiency. Kiki?
Well, I don't know if this story is true, but I think it's absolutely hilarious that the hospitality, who are having a bad enough time as it is at the moment, are now going to have to serve warm beer, which I think we do anyway, but lager.
Such misinformation.
And then the food, you don't know. I thought Ed Miliband had said it, actually, but maybe I'm wrong.
No.
And cold food or whatever.
Well, it's an online advice tool, apparently, that's saying all this.
It's not requiring it. It's slightly patronising advice, which I'm sure is irritating to businesses.
But I think
they've piloted with businesses.
My concern is that we have millions and millions of people living in this country, and we live in a cold country, and people need heating, and they need hot water, and they need their lights on because it's dark by about 3:30, and it seems to me that we are not preparing for that well enough. And I think 2030 is in 4 years' time. I mean, this is never going to happen. It can't happen unless we have renewables along with our own oil and gas. Now, we've got an oil field sitting there. Surely we should be, and we're importing it from somewhere else, and there's an oil crisis at the moment. Why can't we have our own oil?
Completely misunderstands the way that energy markets work.
James.
One of the things I sort of wish that we had with this was a little bit of optimism and a little belief in what can
We're British,
be done.
James.
I mean, a small amount, but I'm going to use my dad as an example here. Like, he's retired. He lives in County Durham in an old mining village in a house worth considerably less than $100,000. Like this, he is not fancy pants. He is Blue Labour heartland in some ways, not policy-wise. And he's got solar panels on his roof. And they are the absolute delight of his life. He spends time looking at when they're generating. Let me stress, he lives in County Durham. There is barely any sun there. And yet they get the power from it. He's got a little app so he can turn his washer on when he's out so that it uses it. And they've got so much better than when he put him in. They've got cheaper, they're easy to import. And the amazing thing is batteries have absolutely transformed in the last 5 years. And that's the game changer. That's your answer to what about when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. It was less than $5,000. He's got a pretty basic setup, and I think he got a loan for it, and he did a bunch of stuff when he retired. I would love to see more loans for people to do that. I would love to see less opposition to solar. I know quite a lot of farmers. They put solar on their rubbish land that they graze sheep on, and you can can have more money for farmers, you can still graze your sheep, and farms are the factory of the country. We generate power. Those kick off. When you look at what we can do, we can actually... More energy is good for heavy industry, light industry, business. We can get a load of this stuff. And there seems to be so much antipathy and so much certainty that we shouldn't put these in because it's woke somehow. And it's like mass scale power generation. It's cheap, it works, and you can have batteries in. That's good, and I don't know why we can't sort of claim to that.
I don't think anyone's against.
You do see it, though. I'm not saying you were.
No,
but
God,
you do see people who don't like it.
I think solar panels and all the rest, they're not particularly attractive, but we are going towards renewables. So I completely understand, and I think you're absolutely right. What worries me is that we're not making enough provision for the capacity that renewables can give us when there are so many millions of people living in a country that's cold and dark and...
Because I didn't give you any warning of what our fun question is going to be in the break there, I'm going to do it now. So I don't want you to answer this question now, but I want you to use the next 7 minutes to prepare your answers. It's from Maggie, who says a Swedish YouTuber has invented a chair which is designed for dumping your clothes on and not for sitting on. It's named the laundry chair and is being sold for £820. What's your most pointless purchase from over the years? So we'll come to that in about 7 minutes' time. But our next question comes from Jason. Richard Tice says we should all pay as little tax as legally possible. How do we expect to fund hospitals, roads, schools if everybody thinks this way? Morris.
Yeah, so, that just reveals what I think is that the reform aren't really generating an alternative economic strategy to a sort of retread conservative over the last 40 years. Sort of maybe Thatcherism revived. Obviously, we don't want to be a country that soaks people with taxes. I do want to see very significant, which I haven't talked about tonight, welfare reform. I think AI has a really hugely important role to play in doing that. There has to be more mutual support. And those sorts of things, but the idea that we don't need a state, we need a state to lead in terms of industrial strategy, and that's going to take a huge amount of investment. So no, Richard, I'm not going that way.
But surely all he's saying is that yes, we should all pay the taxes that we have to pay, but no one should want to pay more than they legally have to. Is there anything controversial about that?
Nothing
really?
Controversial about that. What I smell with Richard Tice is a subterranean Thatcherism.
Subterranean.
I think it's that you can do a lot of very elaborate things. And I mean, the problem with tax avoidance is it's the result of good intentions. People say we want to save more, so you make ISAs. And then some people find very elaborate ways to put lots and lots of money in ISAs and save more. And most tax breaks will help rich people more than poor people. But you end up with more and more tax breaks. People say this product shouldn't have VAT on it. This should have a tax break to invest. This should have that. And you get these elaborate schemes that people get very cross at. But if you get rid of them, people get very angry too. And so no one really voluntarily pays more tax, but we make the tax code so complicated that, the idea of no one pays more tax than they should, we put a bit of money by in an ISA, we do the fair things everyone thinks is okay. But those good intentions and those little breaks all add up, and you get people who can artificially earn 10 or 100 times the average wage and pay very little amounts. I think that's what people object to, and I think most people know it when they see it. It's the old joke about pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. People know what they mean when they do this, and people look at people like Richard Tice who have these offshore complicated lives and they go, yes, I'm sure it's legal, I'm sure it's technically the same, but I know it when I see it.
But if it's legal, what's the problem, Ellie?
Well, it shouldn't be legal. Obviously, tax avoidance shouldn't be legal. I mean, one thing that we need is stronger kind of investment in HMRC's capacity to go after people who are trying to get around tax.
That has actually happened over the last 10 years.
Exactly, and there's really good evidence. There was an NAO report recently saying you get lots of bang for buck if you invest in that HMRC capacity. You get lots of money back from people who are trying to kind of get around the tax rules. But we've seen, people, we've seen at the minute, haven't we, people who are kind of living overseas for tax purposes, suddenly finding that it's not terribly secure where they are, but not wanting to come back to the UK because they don't want to be hit by tax bills just before the end of the financial year. Fundamentally, two things that I'd want to say here. One is that we've got to get away from talking about tax as something that's somehow bad, right? Tax is how we all club together to pay for the things, exactly as Jason says, hospitals, roads, schools, law and order, national defence. This is what tax pays for. But the problem is if it's not fair, and that's the problem that we've got at the moment. We've got a tax system that is very, very complicated, that people can get around in lots of ways, and that is also not fair because wealth is not taxed in the same way as work. Now, the Green Party's been really vocal for many years now, saying that we've got to tax wealth fairly so that those with the broader shoulders are contributing their fair share, because what we've seen, the example we had a couple of years ago where Rishi Sunak was paying effectively a lower rate of tax than somebody who was going out to work as a nurse. That can't be right. So we've got to make sure that taxation of wealth is kind of equivalent to taxation of income.
That the top 1% of earners pay 30% of income tax.
Of course, because they're very, very
say
wealthy.
Of course, but I mean that's quite a large proportion. I mean, what would you like to see that rise to?
It is. Well, that's about income tax, and I'm specifically talking about wealth taxation. I think we should take measures to make income tax fairer as well. Okay. But wealth taxation is where there's a real
need. Let's hear from Kiki.
Well, I don't know anyone who gets up in the morning and says, do you know what, I really feel like paying more tax.
The patriotic millionaires, they all apparently want to.
They all want to pay more. Well, then in which case they can pour more, or they only have to make a call. If they can get through to HMRC, they can make a call.
There's a specific bank account for people to do that.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's probably empty, actually. But anyway.
Not a lot in it.
Empty. So I think that I agree with Ellie. I think the tax system is incredibly complicated, and it gets more and more complicated. But I think if, specifically, the Richard Tice question is that if he isn't doing anything illegal, then I don't think it's a question, really.
Okay.
Is it immoral? That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, if it's not, there's legal and illegal, and it's not illegal what he's doing.
Should you be a national politician, who is seeking office where we need tax to pay for that? This is Jason's questions, right? How will we fund hospitals, roads, schools if everybody thinks about avoiding tax as much as they possibly can? Especially the very, very wealthy, like Richard Tice.
Well, because he's not doing anything illegal, and if you want to save your money or put your money, then you need to change the law.
Exactly.
But until you change the law, there's no point pointing the finger at him. It's pointless.
Right. Maggie has our fun question, which I've given you notice of, as you will all have heard. A Swedish YouTuber has invented a chair which is designed for dumping your clothes on and not for sitting on. It's named the laundry chair and is being sold for £820. I have a floor for that. What's your most pointless purchase from over the years? James.
I've got a fantastic one. Just this weekend, it was got for me as a birthday present. I have a train sign, like the ones on the platforms in the train stations in my house now, and it shows me the departure times for the trains at the station down the road. Utterly pointless. It gives me so much delight, and I know he paid an absolute fortune for it. So I'm very, very grateful to my partner for it. A very stupid present.
Ellie, beat that.
I'm really honestly struggling to think of something. I mean, I am thinking. I did get a sort of steamer thing, one of those things where you iron things upright, so that I could have it in my office, so that I could not look crumpled in public. And I haven't used it yet.
You're tempting me to say something really disobliging now.
Really? Oh no.
But I'm not going to. No, Corey, I'm not going to. Kiki.
Well, I went out, because of course it's good for me, to buy a juicer. And I put the juice thing, took it out of the box, put it on the table, and thought, actually, I haven't got any fruit, so I'll buy some tomorrow. Didn't get round to buying some tomorrow. I'll buy lots of fruit at the weekend, and carrots and God knows what else you put in, more disgusting stuff. And in the end, I thought, do you know what? This is a bloody waste. This is a terrible waste.
The thing is, you buy a juicer, use it once, and you never use it again.
I never wanted it. It's gone. It's gone.
Morris.
My most useless thing is I bought a big television screen, and I realised I just watch on my phone or on the computer, and I don't use it at all. So I've got this massive flat screen.
As a Spurs fan, I can quite understand.
And I just don't watch telly anymore.
Right. Thank you all very much indeed for coming on the panel tonight. Tomorrow on the panel we have, if I can scroll it on my screen, No, it's not there. Here we are. We have the Conservative Deputy Chief Whip Joy Morrissey MP, Labour MP Alex Sobel, plus a couple of think tank directors, Charlotte Pickles, who runs Restate, and Matthew Lawrence, who directs Commonwealth. I suspect those two aren't going to agree on an awful lot, but we will see. Now, coming up in the next hour, we're going to go back to the energy question. Pubs, restaurants and hotels should switch off beer fridges and ovens to save money on energy bills, the government has said, as it advises hospitality firms on cost-cutting measures amid spiralling prices. Well, I think there is a real danger that we are going to go back to the mid-1970s in so many ways, but in particular, there could be a major energy crisis if this war in the Middle East continues. Are we going to get power cuts? Are we all going to be told we have to switch off our screens at a certain time? Are we going to have a 3-day working week? Are speed limits going to be reduced? What would be the way that you personally would save energy?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, former US National Security Advisor John Bolton has told LBC Europe has a lot at stake if it fails to back Donald Trump. The president has lashed out at NATO allies once again, saying he no longer needs their help with the war in Iran. He's also accused Sir Keir Starmer of making a big mistake with his stance. Ambassador Bolton told LBC that while President Trump has made a mistake, NATO should tread carefully.
Number one, normally you build your coalition before you go to war. You don't start the war and then build a coalition later. He completely botched that. But the issue is, what does Europe have at stake here? And Europe does have a lot at stake here. It is a mistake to say this is not Europe's war, because you're leaving the possibility open for Trump to say, okay, well, it's not Europe's war. And guess what? Ukraine's not America's war.
Ukraine's president has repeatedly thanked the UK for not following America's lead in partially lifting sanctions on Russian oil. Donald Trump made the call in response to surging oil prices sparked by the Iran conflict. Sir Keir Starmer's reiterated his government's commitment to the Ukrainian people in its war with Russia, despite events in the Middle East. Thousands of students in university halls in Kent are being given meningitis B vaccines in response to a growing outbreak. The Health Secretary says the pace of spread is unprecedented. 15 cases have now been confirmed, with 2 people dying. But pharmacies say they can't get hold of jabs as surging demand reported across the country. Mital Hetav's a pharmacist in Canterbury.
Since yesterday morning, we have phone call ringing every single minute. We have got 50 people on our waiting list for vaccination, and whole day long. I can't tell you the numbers. It's endless.
And British Airways is introducing direct flights from London Heathrow to Melbourne. The airline says it'll operate a daily service from January the 9th next year, in time for the Australian Open and Grand Prix. The flights will be an extension of the existing one to Kuala Lumpur. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 85 points at 10,403. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.15. LBC weather: patchy light rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland tonight. Dry elsewhere, a low of 1 degree. Sunshine for most tomorrow, with the odd shower in the far northwest of Scotland. Mostly cloudy with light rain for southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and Cumbria. Highs of 20 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
5 minutes past 9 on LBC. Energy efficiency is never the most exciting phrase that anyone can ever utter, is it? But I think it's going to be something that over the next 6 months to a year, I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about it, because if this war in the Middle East goes on for any length of time, if the Strait of Hormuz, which we talked about last night, remains effectively closed to Western shipping, then I think that we are going to have the mother of all energy crises. And those of you who are of a similar age to me will remember that the last time this happened in any meaningful way was in, 73, 74, 75. And there were a number of things that happened then. You had war in the Middle East again. So that provoked energy price rise, massive energy price rise. And in this country, we had coal strikes. And most of our heavy industry at that time was so heavily reliant on the coal industry that it brought the country to a standstill. And I can remember, I mean, what would I have been, sort of 10, 11 years old? I remember sort of having to, there were massive power cuts. We weren't allowed to watch television after 10:30 in the evening. Speed limits on motorways were reduced to 50 miles an hour. There was a 3-day working week for a bit where factories had to close. And it was a pretty miserable time. And a lot of people could not afford their fuel bills, whether it was the coal bill, because we all had coal fires in our homes, or most people did. And that was really the last time that we experienced this. But those of you who remember those days, I'd quite like you to ring in and tell me what your memories are, because, okay, I was a child then, but if you were an adult at the time, and okay, that means you're probably getting on in years now, but if you were an adult sort of coping with the household bills at the time, you'll remember what a difficult time that was, because inflation was absolutely roaring ahead. It was around that time that inflation climbed to sort of 15, 20, 25%. So it was a deeply miserable time. Now, do you think we're going to see these times again? And if so, what should the government do about it? Let's listen to this. Here are a few messages given out to the British public during energy crises in previous decades.
3 pints of milk cost around 35p. That's what you could be wasting every week if the jacket on your hot water tank is only an inch thick. In a year, that's £18 down the drain. So check your tank jacket, and if it's only an inch thick, put a thicker one on top. It won't stop the clothes airing, but it will put an end to a shocking waste of money. It's your money. Don't waste it. Save it.
The best way to save petrol is not to drive. Next best way is not to drive fast. And don't go over 50. If we each save a little fuel, we'll all save a lot.
Industry needs power. So do hospitals. So do essential services. At home, you could get by with less. So switch off some power. Now.
There will be people beavering away in the Department of Energy at the moment, coming up with modern-day equivalents of those public service announcements. You will hear them on your radio. You will see them on your television. You'll see them on your social media, I think, over the next 6 to 12 months, if things don't improve. So the main question I have for you really this hour is, what would be your ideas to save money on your fuel bills or energy bills? Not just for yourself, but also maybe for the country as well. I mean, when we all go home in the evening, we see all of these buildings with the lights still on. I can assure you in this studio, the lights behind me, sort of these huge LED screens, they will go off as soon as we finish this show. But I know that doesn't happen in every broadcast studio. I don't know what effect that would have on energy saving, but I think there are many macro things and there are many micro things that as a country we can do and as individuals we can do. And I wonder whether you think you're prepared for them and what ideas you've got. 0345 6060 973. Because what the government is saying, the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, their new online advice tool, which I guess is an app, suggests that firms avoid unnecessary electricity use by switching off bottle fridges overnight. Well, I've got no idea what effect that would have. I don't know how long you have to have them switched on to get all of the bottles frozen for the next day's hospitality. I don't know. But this app is coming under a bit of ridicule for some of the things that they're suggesting. They're suggesting pubs should serve warmer beer. Okay. But, I mean, in a sense, I think we're all going to have to think about energy-saving mechanisms, and I'm wondering what you think they should be. Tom Burke joins me, co-founder of the environmental-focused think tank E3G, who specialises in environmental and energy policies. Tom, welcome. First of all, do you agree with me that we might well experience the kind of crisis that we had in the 1970s?
We're in having a crisis already. It probably won't be quite as much of a shock as it was in the 70s. I'm one of the people you refer to as being old enough to remember it, and I was older than you even when the 73 crisis happened. It won't be as bad as that because we've decoupled, in a sense, our economy from our energy system, our energy use a lot. It's a lot more than it was at that time. So it won't be quite as, but it will be bad. And in particular, it's coming on top of an existing cost of living crisis that really will hurt people. So I think that it's very bad. But I'm afraid, I think the kind of advice the government is giving is saying, all the mistakes we've made in energy policy, will you please do something to forgive us for them? Because they won't really make much difference. And really the problem is that government needs to wake up to the fact that it's not paid attention to the need to get us away from dependence on other countries for our energy system.
I love the fact that if people are watching this, I love the fact that I'm speaking to you where you have all your lights switched off apart from a desk lamp which is shining on your face. I love the appropriateness of that. So are you saying that then whatever we do as individuals isn't actually going to make much difference?
In terms of the overall impact, that's absolutely right. I think the government's passing the buck, really. The fact of the matter is we live in the leakiest buildings in Europe, and I don't just mean people's homes, I also mean our commercial and industrial buildings. And the thing we really should be actually getting on with is making sure we stop up those leaks, and that will start to get bills down actually faster and cheaper than almost anything else you could do. It's not what the government's priority is, but that's the thing that really... So something people can do is bang on at their MPs about what they actually want to see the government doing for energy and not blaming the public for using too much, which is currently what they seem to be doing.
Well, we had Ellie Chowns, the Green Party leader in Westminster, on in the last hour, and she was saying, well, sort of home insulation is the most important thing, and she wants a massive new rollout of insulation in people's homes. Which, I mean, in theory is a great idea. Who wouldn't think that was a good idea? But the reason the government doesn't do it is because if it's a government-inspired initiative, it would cost billions and billions to do. And we also have a housing stock where for many houses, I mean, Victorian-built houses or whatever, you couldn't even do it.
I'm not sure about that last point you made, Ian. I think you can do something everywhere to stop the leaks, which is essentially what you're trying to do. And in that sense, the Green Party is right about it. And yes, it would cost billions. So is anything else you're going to do with the energy system. The question is, what gives you the best bang for your buck when you spend those billions? So it's not just the government needs to spend it. The government does the right policies, then it can leverage lots of private capital into doing that as well. But right now, nobody has much confidence in the government dealing with energy policy at all. So I think it's cheaper and faster to do that. And as I said, not just for homes, but also for commercial buildings and for industrial buildings. Because if they're paying too much for energy, it all ends up in our bills, not just in our energy bills, it ends up in the bill we pay for all the other things we use. But there's something else we could do, which is actually to invest in upgrading the grid so we don't spend £1 billion a year switching off very cheap wind power in order to buy much more expensive gas. And that's a question of the fact that we just haven't invested enough in the grid to do that. Now, there's not very much people as individuals can do, but they sure as hell can do something if they put pressure on the politicians to get on with doing something that's pretty obvious.
So what's the one thing that if I had Ed Miliband in the studio now, what's the one thing that you would say, Ed, this is what you need to do to sort of try and avert as much as possible an energy crisis?
Actually, in terms of this one, there's not very much. We've got to grin and bear it and hope the war doesn't go on for too long, because everything you've got to do is going to take some time. But I think the thing that I would say to Ed in that question is let's invest in getting a lot more investment in batteries so we can take better advantage of wind and solar power and not worry about the fact that the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. And that requires a big investment in batteries. That's better than spending... I mean, every electricity consumer in Britain is spending £1 a month now on building a nuclear power station that isn't going to generate electricity till 2035. So I'd tell Ed to focus on now and not tomorrow.
Isn't that the problem with our energy policy over the last 20 years, that we've done that and haven't thought about the long term?
In one sense, you're absolutely right. But that we haven't done that, you're exactly right as a policymaker. But right now, we're in the middle of a crisis. And the question you've been asking quite correctly is what can be done to help with the crisis? But you're absolutely right. We need to take a much more long-run strategic view of energy. And it's not going to be a question of somehow a magic of markets making it work. And it does mean we've got to get government to make be better understanding of what gets private capital to flow effectively into the kind of high, as you rightly said, highly expensive infrastructure we need in order to increase not just lower bills for people, but also increase our energy security. Because if you think this is the last of the shocks we're going to have on fossil fuels, I think you're dreaming, frankly, given the way the world is going. There's going to be more like this. So the quicker we can get off fossil fuels, the better.
Tom, thank you very much indeed. As ever, that's Tom Burke, co-founder of the environmental focused think tank E3G. Right, we'll come to your calls in a moment. I mean, in a sense, Tom has pulled the rug from under my feet by saying, well, there's not a lot that we as individuals can do. But as Mr. Tesco always says, every little helps, doesn't it? What do you think you could do to reduce your energy consumption? And what do you think the government should be doing? This whole idea of short-term versus long-term, I think this has bedeviled our energy policy for decades, actually, because we have Labour complaining that the Conservatives didn't build any nuclear power stations. Well, that's because none of them were given the go-ahead under the Labour government. I think there was one that was given the go-ahead, which is being built at the moment. Is it Hinkley C? And I think there's another one scheduled. But, I mean, 1 or 2 extra nuclear power stations, I mean, it's a drop in the ocean compared to what we need. But it can't all be about nuclear, can it? There has to be a way that we can all reduce our individual energy bills. And is it up to the energy companies to help in this regard? I mean, there are energy companies out there that I think are actually quite good in giving advice to their customers as to what they should and shouldn't be doing. There are some that aren't very good at all. Maybe you can give me your experiences of that. And also, if you remember the energy crisis of 1973-4, give me a call and tell me what your recollections were and possibly give a bit of a warning for today's younger generations. It's 18 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and come on in to Classic FM Calm, LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
When it comes to retirement advice, the last thing you want is to be put in a bucket, seen as this type of person or that type of person. At Fisher Investments UK, we never put you in a bucket. We always tailor retirement advice that's just right for you. Fisher Investments UK, retirement advice that's as individual as you are. Learn more at fisherinvestments.co.uk. Investing involves the risk of loss. Fisher Investments UK is regulated by the UK Financial Conduct Authority.
Fancy a trip to France without the fancy price tag? Go all Irish. With great low prices, travel from Dover to Calais with Irish ferries and you'll have France at your feet in 90 minutes. Can, less. More money, less money. You get the picture. Get a warm Irish welcome on board and a cool pint of the black stuff on us. 0 alcohol, of course. When you book direct at irishferries.com. Go on then. Irish Ferries. See travel differently. T's and C's apply.
You want your car in good hands with expertise? Halfords will keep it moving this spring with ease. You want your annual service ticked off? That's great. And in store, we'll fit batteries while you wait. You're never far from a garage or store for fitting, fixing, checks and more. You want mobile experts to fit tyres on your drive while you relax and take 5 to keep moving forwards with none of the fuss. You want Halfords, the name you can trust. Full T's and C's and exclusions apply. See halfords.com for details.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
9:21 on LBC. I do like to admit when I'm wrong, Some of you may issue a hollow laugh at that, but I really do. And it appears that on Cross Question, Ellie Chowns was more right than I was in her description of Jonathan Powell, Starmer's national security advisor, being involved in the talks with Iran. Now, she said they were in Geneva, and I said they were in Oman. Well, apparently they were in the Oman residence, the ambassador's residence in Geneva, and Jonathan Powell was in the Oman embassy in Cologne, Germany. So on the balance, I think she was more right than I was. So I'd just like to make that clear. Right, let's go to your calls. We're talking about energy security, energy prices. Are we about to experience an energy crisis in this country? Because if we experience it, everyone else will be, certainly in Western Europe. Some people would say we're already in an energy crisis. So are you doing anything? Are you doing anything to mitigate that for your own home circumstances, your family budget? And do you think that we all have a responsibility to examine the energy that we're using and try to cut it? I mean, if we all cut our energy consumption by 10% in a year, surely that would have an impact on the country's sort of energy budget. 0345 6060 973. Jerry is in Whitley Bay and Tyne Weir. Hello, Jerry.
Good evening, Ian.
Hi.
Energy is the most expensive in the Western world. If we're going to get growth and get movement in the economy, we cannot have the most expensive energy in the world. Now, you have the guy on from E3G, everything's got to be green and that will solve everything. Well, electricity is only 25% of our energy demand. So 75% of it is coming from fossil fuels. So even if you went net zero on the grid tomorrow, 75% of our energy demand would still be fossil fuels. So we really need more of our own in that scale. And when you're looking at things coming up in front of us like war, where you're going to need virgin steel, chemicals, and oil for any number of uses, we cannot ignore fossil fuels. And we're going to find out how much we need fossil fuels in this crisis, despite Just Stop Oil saying, well, literally, just stop oil. Because what we're going to see is just a 20% cut in what's going to happen, which means we're going to be in crisis. Now, if we had 100% less oil, where would we be? Now, on top of that, you've got things like fertilizer, which is produced from gas. So if we don't have gas, we have to import fertilizer, and we're importing fertilizer from places like Ukraine where it's cheaper, but obviously that's under war, and we were importing it from the Middle East, which is also now under war. So we won't be able to produce our own food. Even if you can get away from oil for energy production, you're looking at things like chemicals and plastics, and there's about 72 different uses for oil as a derivative in multiple products we cannot replace. Now, the ECG guy said we should insulate houses. Well, that's all very fine. But the government's very own climate change committee said 7 years ago, and we've had a lot of inflation since then, that the cost of insulating the average UK house to net zero heat pump standards would cost on average £42,000 per household. And
are you sure about that? I mean, that sounds ridiculously high.
You'd be surprised how much insulation you need on a house to be able to heat it with a heat pump. That was rumoured to cost then $650 billion. Now, after inflation, that's probably clocking closer to $1 trillion now. Even if it was half that or a quarter of that.
Sorry, let's go back to this 42,000 figure. Yep. How on earth is that arrived at? When I don't have a massive house, but it's 4 bedrooms. I mean, all you have to do to insulate my house, and it's built in 1985, you just put the stuff down. I haven't even got the terminology here. The foam stuff down in the insulation in the roof space. I mean, that doesn't cost £42,000.
No, it doesn't. That costs a few £100. I've got that, Ian.
So where's the rest coming from?
Broke down 2 days ago. I'm looking at the temperature at the moment. It's about 14 degrees. Right, and it's been quite a warm day today. So, unless you have I actually have cavity wall insulation as well, and I have about 9 inches of loft insulation. Now, if you want to keep a house at about 20 odd degrees or getting on that way, you need a lot of external insulation on it. And I'm not joking. This was published in the Conversation magazine, and it linked out a Guardian article on this as well. So that's where the 42 grand a house came from. And that was assuming that 20% of the housing stock in the UK would have to be written off as not capable of doing that, and the other 80%, because remember, a lot of the houses are going back to the 1930s, 1920s, 1900, where they really are quite poor on insulation.
Yeah,
So
and there's a lot of houses
that
are way older than that.
There will be some way older than that as well, yeah. So you're taking an average across the UK. A lot of these were not built for insulation standards. So you would have to do an awful lot of houses to do that. And the average price they came out with, we're not talking about cutting your energy bills, we're talking about reducing them to a level where a heat pump in the middle of winter, when it's -6 outside, can keep you warm inside.
But nobody's buying heat pumps.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying is if you want to get to this low insulation standards where heat pumps will work in the worst case scenarios that you will get, then that is what you have to do.
But heat pumps, what are they, £11,000-12,000?
Well, that depends. I mean, I've heard some of your callers phoning in other shows. One was quoted, I think, nearly 40 grand. I think there was a guy the other week who phoned in, he had a bungalow. He got a guy out to fix his central heating and said, if I fit a heat pump, what would it cost? And he said, well, first of all, you'd have to rip out your kitchen, you'd have to rip out your bathroom, you'd have to rip out the floors, you'd have to put in all the piping, put in a concrete floor. And he went on, and he said, well, the bill would be getting close to 100 grand.
Well, nobody is going to do that, are they?
No, they're not, no. So, I mean, heat pumps will work for certain houses, certain situations, and if they're built around heat pumps, obviously a lot cheaper.
So the argument that the government, and I think this is more the last government than this one, put forward as to persuade us to all buy or go to heat pumps was saying, well, if enough people buy them, they'll reduce in price, and this is the way forward. But not enough people have bought them because very few people could afford 11,000. I mean, I must admit, I would not buy one if it was going to cost £11,000. And I think it's a rational economic decision not to, isn't it?
Correct. Well, have a word with Tom Swarbrick because he looked into it.
Did he?
Yeah.
And did he buy one?
No. He put a gas boiler in.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Is in certain cases it might cost you 10 or 15 grand, but if you can put 15 grand in the bank and let's say you can get 4.5 or 5% interest, the interest off the money would probably pay the excess of your bills. And if your electricity bill is continually going up and all your heating is electric, I don't see the savings. I mean, unless you've got solar panels, which is fine, but obviously in the middle of winter, you're not going to get an awful lot of heating from solar panels, which is when you need the heating.
Yeah, quite. Jerry, great to talk to you, and thank you. I mean, the reason I kept you on so long, you clearly know what you're talking about, and I think that there was a lot in there that we all want to digest. Thank you very much indeed. Right, news headlines with Katie Dartford at 9:31.
The Health Secretary's described an outbreak of meningitis B in Kent as unprecedented as thousands of students offered vaccinations. 15 cases have now been confirmed, 2 of them fatal. Iran's confirmed the death of a key military figure who's been killed in an Israeli airstrike. Golem Reza Soleimani led the Basij militia, which plays a major role in domestic security. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's renewed criticism of Sir Keir Starmer over his reluctance to help in the war, saying he doesn't produce. Ukraine's president has praised the UK for sticking by his country by not easing oil sanctions on Russia. America's partly done so in response to surging prices in the Middle East. Addressing MPs and peers at Westminster, Volodymyr Zelensky called the Iranian and Russian regimes brothers in hatred. And NSPs have begun a final vote which could see Scotland become the first UK nation to introduce assisted dying. They'll vote tonight on plans to allow terminally ill adults to get help to end their lives. LBC weather, patchy rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland tonight, dry elsewhere with a low of 1.
LBC.
Way up here, right at the edge of oxygen, in space. That's where you'll find us. O2 Satellite keeps you connected in more places than ever before. So even when you're far from everything, you won't have to miss a thing. Introducing O2 Satellite. O2, essential for living.
30-day rolling add-on, £3 per month. Device type, app, location and other restrictions apply. See odo.co.uk/terms.
1983 election, she's won a landslide second term.
Police have been deployed to disperse crowds as the poll tax riots escalate.
Credit crunch is continuing to spread from the USA.
Britain has left the European Union. I mean, the list goes on. Boris, Liz,
We've
Rishi.
helped Britain invest through 45 years of change. That's why we're the UK's #1 investment and savings platform, trusted by 2 million people. Hargreaves Lansdown, helping Britain invest for it all. Investment returns vary. For claim verification, visit hl.co.uk.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
9:34, we're talking about energy efficiency and what you can do to reduce your energy bills. Hanif says, I work for a large pub company. We already have a system set up that controls the heating and outside lighting, etc., to keep it as low as possible. The same system also shuts off our fridges and cellar fans at closing time and turns them back on 1 hour before opening. It's so clever, and it's saving the company thousands and helping the planet at the same time. And that's really what every company should be doing, isn't it? It's the responsible thing to do. In our studios here at Millbank, we have an office up the end of the newsroom, which causes great hilarity because Andrew Marr uses it more than anybody else. And if you don't move in that office, the lights go off after about 5 minutes, and it causes great hilarity when we watch Andrew waving his arms about to get the lights to come back on. But I mean, that I don't know how much that saves a year for Global. I mean, it was probably £10 a year, but it's worth it just for the just for the laughs, isn't it? Frankly, right. Let's go to Michael in Sunderland. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Ian. Maybe you should pass on Jerry's contact details with someone in government because he seems to know a lot more than them.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah. In my experience, because I used to be in hospitality, and I think this government is trying to kill off hospitality finally. You kind of keep turning your fridges on and off. I know what your previous caller says about the heating, the lights and everything. It takes 24 hours for a fridge to get the temperature for the beer. And if you keep turning the fridges on and off, it'll affect the quality and the lifespan of the beer. So you kind of keep doing that. Plus, hopefully we'll have a nice summer. So you're asking everybody to go back maybe into the 70s to all drink real ale, warm beer, no ice in your drinks. Is that what they're trying to recommend? To finally kill off the hospitality?
Well, I don't think there is an agenda to kill off hospitality. I think a lot of the things that the government have done have had the effect of making it much more difficult for companies to operate in that sector. I'd agree. I'd go that far with you. But look, in the end, if we get to a real national crisis in terms of energy, that we're all going to have to make some pretty severe choices, aren't we?
Well, yeah, I'm the same as you. I was 11 years old when we had the power cuts, and there were 7 of us, 7 kids, 9 altogether, living in the household. And you can imagine that on bath night when you had to go to school, when the power was getting turned off, well, I got to bed by 7, 8 o'clock because of the lighting and one thing and another. And I have to run a competition at school called Save It. It was about people with the cars and the house and everything, and stupid little things that you petrol. Tell people to check the tyres. Make sure the tyres are blown up so they don't use so much fuel. Make sure they're not carrying too much dead weight. You know what I mean? In the 70s, obviously, people had tools and everything in the vans. You kind of expect workmen not to have that, but just little things, turn your lights off, like you've just said there earlier on. And we had coal in our house. Most people did. We lived in a 4-bedroom house. It was all coal fires in the bedrooms. But if you didn't get your coal, we're all scrimping and scraping, you know what I mean? And it was continental quilts in them days. Duvets, idle covers and things like that. Not quilts, sorry. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, we didn't have duvets, did we? It was literally sheets and a blanket on the top.
Yeah, knitted blankets on the top of your bed.
I've got all of these 20-somethings looking at me thinking, what is he on about?
And it was only time, because we didn't have any radiators and heating in the house and that. 3 of us, like me and my 2 brothers, sharing the bed, one double bed.
Yeah, top and tail.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't top and tail, but you know, 3 of us in a double bed or a 3/4 bed. But that's what you did in them days. But you try to do that today. It's like a Monty Python sketch.
And we still had change out of a farthing, didn't we?
Yeah, they're not believe you. I'm telling you.
I'm just looking at it now, thinking, what's a farthing?
Yeah, Tanner. You know what I mean? And all that.
Oh dear, Michael, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Another Michael here says, how much energy would mass working from home again save us? I would imagine that having those who reasonably can working from home saves a huge amount of energy in terms of car fuel and the energy requirements to power public transport, fewer buses and trains required. Well, again, that is a valid point. Another Michael, God, it's an evening of Michaels. They're taking the Michael. It's Michael in Dover this time. Hello, Michael.
Hi. I'm reliving my life here, listening to everyone, going back through. Back in 1973, I'd saved my paper money a year or 2 before and bought myself a moped when I was 15, ready for when I was 16. And I remember receiving a fuel rationing book for my moped, and never used it, but I received it. That was back in the early 70s. I worked on the railway for about 30 years, and one of the directors of the parent company gave me access to a code to get into the computer, and you could look up the energy use of all the railway stations and bus stations that were run by this company. And you could always tell when I'd been on a night shift at the station where I worked by looking at the printout of the energy use. Because I used to go around, when the station closed, we used to close about 1 o'clock and reopen about 4 o'clock. But I used to go around, switch off any lights and computers that weren't necessary, and you could see on the screen over a period of time the weeks that I was working nights, because I was the only one that did it. The other 3 supervisors didn't bother, and they used far more energy when they were on shift. So people can make a difference. If you switch off your computers and TVs and lights when you're not using them, rather than leaving computers on standby, it makes a difference.
Mm.
As for heat pumps, when we were being told by heat pumps, I used to cringe, because you do need substantial insulation. Most people think of loft insulation when they're insulating a house, but you do need to insulate the walls. Some houses, I've got 2 houses that don't have cavity walls, they're solid walls. So you can't just put your granules down in the cavity. My mother's got a house that's built in the mid-60s. That's got a cavity wall, but she's been advised not to have the cavity wall insulation because it could cause damp patches because of the structure of the house. So that's another issue. But also, if you're going to have heat pumps, you must insulate the floor. It has to be a comprehensive insulation plan. And if you're going to be serious about it, you need to have triple glazing, not double glazing. And finally, can I just say, the planning officers in local council offices need to be brought up to pace, presumably by governments and rulings, because I've got aspirations to want to have a house built. And the way I'm looking at it, it's going to be low energy. But the planning officer, I had a site meeting, and the planning officer was going on about how I ought to have a house designed, and she came out with a description of a house, glass elevations, flat roof. And it just wasn't in keeping for what I want. I don't want to live in what amounts to effectively a modern supermarket appearance. And I don't want a flat roof because I want solar energy on the roof, and that's best situated at an angle, not flat. So, the planning officers need to be educated to allow people like me to be able to go ahead and get permission to build a house that's going to be suitable to live in, but low energy. And the government has to lead that and not be so antiquated in the restrictions that they're imposing on me. I'm sure I'm going to get the house I want to live in eventually, but there's so many battles that I envisage that I'm going to have purely because the planning officers aren't necessarily up to pace with what's available today.
No, well, I think you're absolutely right. And given the number of new houses that we need to be building in this country, surely part of the planning system ought to be, well, look, if you guarantee to maybe have solar panels or maybe have some sort of environmental aspect to the design of the house, you're more likely to get planning permission than if you don't. I mean, it must be possible to do that, I would have thought. Thank you very much indeed, Michael. We have a caller who isn't called Michael. He's called Adam. He's a first-time caller from Edinburgh. Hello, Adam.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
Yeah, just in response to a couple of other previous calls. So I actually I bought a 1920s house about 5 months ago or so, and it needed kind of fully renovated, and part of that kind of process was getting an air source heat pump installed, actually. I used to have a gas boiler, but it needed to be replaced, so just took advantage of one of the schemes that were available there through the government, and so it's just to kind of, I suppose, put a live example of the kind of cost that you're looking at. So the actual boiler in total was about 16,000. I got about 9,000 of a grant, so it brought it down to basically the equivalent price if I'd replaced a gas boiler and all the radiators. So the cost on, with a grant was on a kind of par. And in terms of I know one of the guys said about 40,000 or 40 or 50,000 pounds of insulation that was required and that kind of stuff. As I say, the property is 1920s. It was barely renovated before. We did have to upgrade the loft insulation, I think is what you touched on before as well. That wasn't much, right? And then there was I've upgraded some of the kind of double glazing as well, but there's no underfloor insulation required and that kind of stuff for that work. So I think, I think part of the problem is a misunderstanding around about what is required. Yes, it's ideal to get all these things, and the last caller talks about getting triple glazing and that kind of stuff. I'm sure that would be wonderful, but I think it's not realistic for many people, and certainly even to install this stuff, I wasn't told that we had to get all these additional things put in, and I've certainly found it to be working fine without triple glazing, without underfloor insulation, without ripping out bathrooms and all that kind of stuff. So I think we just need to kind of feather off some of the negative connotations around about some of this kind of stuff.
And I mean, how much about this did you know before you embarked on it? Because I think that
absolutely none.
well, that's actually good to know.
Yeah. So I was going to say there was lots and lots of kind of information available from the government and government agencies, when you go down this route, because to your point there, I had not a clue. There's so much information out there, but there's so many advice lines and that kind of stuff that guide you through it. And yeah, it wasn't without worry at one point because you are having to make a choice, right? Okay, go with an air source heat pump and all that negative potential connotations if I ever sold the house, compared to, people know gas boilers, they know how they work and all that kind of stuff, and even try to explain how an air source heat pump works.
Yeah.
Can be like double Dutch at times, listening to the installer and that kind of stuff. But as I say, it works. I can confirm it works well. I've certainly been satisfied with it so far.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I think part of the things that put people off going down the road that you've been down is not really knowing anything about it and thinking that it's going to be so complicated. Everything will be double the price that you think it's going to be. And so therefore you put it in the too difficult tray, and then 6 months later you come back to it and you think, okay, well, I really must get on with this. And then you find it intimidating again. And so you, again, put it back in the too difficult tray. And 5 years later, you still haven't done anything about it. So well done to you, Adam. Thank you very much indeed for your call. We'll come back to more of your calls on energy efficiency and cost saving in just a moment. It's 9:47.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
After another day of furious ranting by the US president, how dangerous do you think an increasingly unstable Trump is? Plus, how worried should we be about the meningitis outbreak in Kent?
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Why are you abseiling down the front of your house, Ross? You have a staircase.
I like doing things the hard way, Albert.
Try something easier, Ross. Get cheaper off-peak energy. It's available at different times, like during the day or weekends. Just get a smart meter and choose a flexible scheme or tariff.
Ooh, I could batch cook some quiche.
Perfect. With a smart meter, getting cheaper energy is easier than you think.
Eligibility varies. Action required. Schemes and tariffs available to selected customers.
Train to Cambridge and then all aboard the paddleboards. A little bit different, should be fun. Or wobbly, or wet.
The wetsuit's a good look on you, Steve. Oh, actually, this is very relaxed. Georgie's up the River Cam without a paddle.
Train home, that was such a laugh. I think I might even have a new hobby. Download the Thameslink Railway app to book tickets and save a third off group travel on off-peak journeys. Thameslink Railway, where every stop is a story.
Turn ordinary into the extraordinary every day with the Lexus LBX. Whilst most SUVs are big and brash, the LBX is quietly bold and confident. Refined luxury crafted into a compact SUV. The Lexus LBX. What car's best small SUV 2024 and 2025?
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on. Sorry.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Iain Dale, text 84850. This is LBC.
10 to 10, Mark in Wakefield says, very pleased with our heat pump. Had to replace broken oil boiler. Cost of new oil boiler, 7,500. New heat pump was 15,000. But the government gave us half, so no difference. Not now hostage to Iran and can generate our own energy. Oil has gone up from 55p to £1.50 per litre in 2 weeks. Well, you're absolutely right on that. But these subsidies, like, if the government is really spending money to that degree where somebody's getting between £7,500 and £9,000 as half the cost of a heat pump, I mean, multiply that up. I mean, my maths isn't good enough, but say they did that for 100,000 people, which is a pinprick in the population of 70 million. I mean, that is a phenomenal amount of taxpayers' money going on to subsidising heat pumps, isn't it? Douglas is in West Kilbride. Hello, Douglas.
Oh, hello there, Ian. I've got a little thing that people who drive cars can make use of to cut their costs a bit. It's make use of cruise control.
Yes.
Since 2010, I've driven a succession of cars. Admittedly, the first 4 of them were Motability cars, courtesy of my disabled wife. But I did all the driving; she couldn't drive. But anyway, if you get an automatic hybrid petrol-driven car, my current one can do 65 and a decimal to the gallon on it, 65 miles per gallon. And all the other ones have done the same. Simple expedient, switch on cruise control, set your speed for whatever you want or whatever the local speed limit is. And you will return these kind of...
Yeah, and I've noticed that in my electric car, where if you travel at a constant sort of 55, 60 miles an hour on a motorway, your mileage that you get out of the charge is increased exponentially. Whereas if you go 70, 75, which is what most people drive out on a motorway, it cuts the mileage by a massive amount.
Exactly. I would wholeheartedly agree with you on that. As I proved, I must admit I tend to, being of now in my 80th year, I'm a little bit slower than I once was, but I tend to drive on the open road at 50 and on dual carriageways and motorways at 60. Or let the cars, I set the cruise control for that.
Yeah.
The car does it.
And that is fuel efficient. And if you have it on cruise control, you can't get a speeding fine, which is a lesson I should have learned a long time ago.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yes, I was listening to you the other night, bemoaning that.
Yes, well, enough of that. We'll move on, Douglas. Thank you. Least said, soonest mended, as they say. Right, Andrew is a first-time caller in Barnes. Hello, Andrew.
Hello.
Hi. Are you there? I think his line's given up. Let's go to Ben in Clacton. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Ian. Yes, well, if you give me 5 minutes, I can go through the chap that you got on earlier.
Well, if you have 5 minutes, that means I can't get anyone else on before the end of the programme, Ben. So be concise as you can.
Okay, well, the horror story the chap was saying originally is mostly not true. And you can have a heat pump put in for... I had 10 radiators and a heat pump put in and a tank and everything else for 4,000. That was obviously with the government 7,500 added to that, but that didn't cost me anything. It cost 4,000. You can have it done, and if I'm allowed to mention a company that do it at the moment, am I allowed to do that?
Sure.
Yeah, they're called Heat Geeks. And they claim they can put in a heat pump and all it needs without removing if your hot water tank is up to a certain standard, then the government will allow you to keep the actual tank, and that cuts the cost quite substantially. And they reckon they can do it for around about the same cost as a boiler. And the COP, this coefficient of performance, is on average about 3 to 4 times. Every unit you put in, you get 3 or 4 times the energy out of the heat pump itself. They do work as long as there's a proper survey done. And it doesn't require, they can do it without insulation, but insulation obviously helps. But it can heat the house. And they can do it now for a lot less than the quoted figures at the moment.
So if they can do it, why can't others?
Well, this is it. And they're training. They're actually training other people at the moment, and they're doing a variety of different sized boilers as well. For not so much for the gas and all that sort of thing, but for heating the water. They do a mini, a medium, a maxi, right up the scale, so that it's very versatile. You can have a small flat with just enough water for your own use. I mean, I was putting in, I was a facilities manager for 45 years in London, and I was putting solar panels on roofs and heat pumps, commercial heat pumps and heat exchangers in 30 years ago. For swimming pools mainly, because swimming pools are expensive to run. So we did that then because it saved a fortune. And also you had 64 computers going on in a school left on all night, so you put an automatic system on that just switches them off. Except there'll be one or two exceptions, but you can set the thing up so as it's a building management system.
Ben,
So
can we leave it there? Because I do want to get back to Andrew in Barnes, because he's a first-time caller and his line gave up, but hopefully he's back now. Ben, thank you. Andrew, hi.
Ian, evening. How are we doing?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
I'm not selling double glazing insulation or anything like that, right?
So you say.
And I'm not a scientist. I've been told not to leave the village, so work out what you want from that. But what I do want to mention, there is a form of energy discovered by Nikola Tesla, free energy, which is called 0-point energy. Now, I'd like to throw it into the bullring for discussion. Nikola Tesla had a car that ran on no fuel. But when the men in black turned up, they nicked all his stuff, and it's all been hidden from us to protect the petrol dollar and all that. So, does 0-point energy exist, and why don't they give it to us? And that's basically, all I need to tell.
Well, I mean, look, I'm completely out of my depth on that. I've never heard of 0-point energy, but
well, there are people that have, and they're clever people. But like I say, everything's been hidden from us. This is the 21st century. We're still burning sticks and coal. Don't you think that the science has gone on a bit further?
Well, we're not doing that. We don't really have any coal power in this country now. Andrew, thank you. Let's quickly take this text here. Ian, ask your 20-something colleagues if they could remember a thing called a paraffin heater. They were awful. I remember those. Me and my younger brother would get up in the middle of the night. Our eyes were red and we could barely breathe. And one day my mum said to my dad, no, we can't use that anymore. It's killing them. So my dad got rid of it. And I think about 15 years later, they made them illegal anyway. But they were just terrible. But back in the 60s and 70s, when a lot of places didn't have central heating, that's all we had. Well, I do remember those. And I can actually smell the smell of them right now. Well, thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'm back tomorrow from 7. If you missed any of this evening's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinion. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Richard Spur. But right now, it's Ben Kentish.
Ian, thank you very much indeed. Hello there. A very, very good evening to you this Tuesday night. On the programme...
You see that man right there? You know who that is? Churchill. Winston Churchill. The late, great Winston Churchill. Unfortunately, Keir is not Winston Churchill.
More slightly deranged rantings from Donald Trump today. It must be said, having said that he needed support to reopen, he doesn't need help after all. It seems to me that the most unpredictable US president in history is getting more and more unstable, constantly contradicting himself, lashing out at America's supporters, telling outright lies